2 minutes late. That's all right. Oh, right. We are live, I think, in T minus. And welcome to Magic Without Fears, the Hermetic podcast. I am back with one of my favorite guests of all time, Dr. Terry Burns. Welcome
How you doing
back,
there,
Terry.
brother?
Yeah, it's good. It's a long time no talk.
Yeah.
We don't talk all the time anymore. You know, I was thinking, though, earlier today, how funny it is that it's actually been quite a while since our first podcast and us first meeting face-to-face like this. And back then, we, at the end of the podcast, in a little after segment, we talked about the possibility of maybe having you come to Vancouver and doing a John D. and Edward Kelly Enochian conference. And since then, we've done two.
Enochian. That's just awesome. Yeah, that's been fantastic. We were mainly then talking about the Monas Hieroglyphica, and it sort of segued into Enochian, which is awesome. They're my two favorite things to talk about. So here we are again, and I'll see you in about a month, a little.
Yeah, we have we've announced just the other day the workshop for 2025. Something we couldn't do the first year, though I wanted to in 2024 do a workshop as well, so that members got more bang for their buck. And this year it's happening, so everyone gets to attend at Enochian, gets to attend our workshop coming up. So folks, you can still attend, you can still join, you can watch the conference this summer and join us December 6th for a full day workshop with myself and Dr. Burns here. And it's going to be fun, and especially since we're going to be focusing on practice more than the theory and scholarship, which is what the main conference was about. So we're going to talk a bit about today about what our thoughts are on Enochian magic in practice and the different aspects of the system and what you can do with it. And just before we went live, you were saying you've done some very creative things with it, as have I. I've also done a lot of traditional things with it, and we'll just talk about all that and so much more. And of course, for those listening, I'm going to throw, I can actually throw your comments on the screen. So if you want to say hello and may drop a question, you're welcome to do that. And you can also, make little super chat donations, and we'll give those priority, of course. So thank you very much for everyone here today to hang out with us and hear about all things John D. and Enochian. Oh, that the thing is sort of covering your face. I wonder if I can move that. Let's see. Oh, it's okay.
I mean,
okay,
honestly,
right?
I have no. Well, good. Here, I'll see if I can get it over a scar or something. I don't know. No, we're good.
It's all right. All right. So, well, I'd love to reflect first on how. What do you think? How has it been the last couple of years? How was Enochian 2024 and 2025 for you? What were some of your highlights from them? And of course, we'll also talk about the 2026 Enochian later on and the epicness that shall ensue at that event.
Well, I mean, the first one was awesome. It was virtual, of course, but that worked well. The highlight in the last one, there were, the highlight for me, and this, may say more about me than Enochian, but was the after party, and Justin Sledge, whose talk was fantastic, and he brought a copy of True and Faithful Relation, and then Aaron Leach had noted going through it that it was actually used to table out some things in Enochian. I mean, that was the absolute highlight. But there were so many people who were there who I had not met before. And like Aaron, even though Aaron and I moderated a John D group, I don't know, that's 20 years ago now, which is shocking. We never met in person. So all kinds of things. I mean, the hardest thing for me was doing it without Alan, my husband who passed away this January, because he was at the first one. And I I will, for the rest of my life, though, be happy that he decided to talk about what he did then, which was how his UFO experiences, which profoundly shaped his life, also connected with his Enochian stuff. And that's, of course, connected in a very different way to some of the stuff Daniel Reksham has talked about in both conferences, because, you know, how do we really know who Dee and Kelly were talking to? And at what point their psyche stopped, or Kelly's in particular stopped, and something else was coming through. I mean, there's actually, I think, a very discreet place where another of my friends who has passed away, Vincent Bridges, in his book on Kelly, thought, oh, it's at this particular place. Okay, so if you can show from a certain point on this can't be faked, then who were they talking through? Like, it's a very Judeo-Christian filter, which is fine if you're fine with that. But there's no reason that what was coming through couldn't be what Dr. Stephen Greer say would look at as consciousness-assisted technology, or some kind of channeling that's not necessarily from what we would think of as Judeo-Christian angels. But it could be that. Certainly, that's the most people look at it that way. But I think you did a wonderful job of bringing people from many different viewpoints, from kind of traditional grimoire perspectives, and that's being pushed forward with presentations, you know, like the one Joseph Peterson and Ike Baker. And well, I mean, you just had a great group of people, and it's good to get everyone, I think, together. Then I'll stop this long answer, but you know, I'm a multiple Gemini, so you get what you get that from me. But
you get what you get.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, unless you particularly go a deep purist route, which I've already expressed what I think about that many times before, but what is a deep purist route? If you don't understand his Monas Hieroglyphica, and you don't understand Kelly's magical background, and the second, I mean, you don't know that you know that, you can't really be too deep purist. And then if you shift to, say, the first organized group that did it, the original Order of the Golden Dawn, well, there's a lot of difference between that and what Dee and Kelly did. And then, well, of course, what Crowley did is building on the GD stuff. But, you know, let's just say his and Newberg scrying the ethers was nothing at all like me and Alan's scrying the ethers. I can promise you that. So, like, what is GD orthodoxy? And I don't think there is such a thing. So I think it's really important to have a conference like Enochian. And then the other thing that many of us this year commented about and found borderline hilarious was, you know, not that there is ever any conflicts in magical orders. I'm sure everyone just gets along peacefully and loves one another and holds hands and sings Kumbaya. But imagining that there were difficulties in magical orders, we would just try to have people imagine that we were, it's the first time I've seen, for example, people from many different GD backgrounds, OTO and AA backgrounds, independent backgrounds, and people like Daniel, who had no intention of doing magic and then it happened, or people like Justin who have a more pure academic approach to it. I mean, I have an academic approach, but I'm a practitioner also. And we were all just having civil conversations. I don't really remember one argument. I mean, it was wonderful.
Everyone got along swimmingly, it seemed to me, and that was a big part of the goal of you know, the mission statement of this society, as we call it, is in-person events. That's the mission statement, and everyone else who supports that is basically helping us sort of kickstart a new thing that is dedicated to that end of really connecting with each other. Because it's so different when you meet someone in real life. It's so easy online, as we all know, to just get vitriolic constantly. The internet's designed that way. So yeah, as soon as we had a very pleasant time, and people from all different stripes and backgrounds of, you know, we had 8 different members of 8 different Golden Dawn orders attended that conference, and ironically, not a single one of the Canadian orders. So, well,
and not the head of any order either, which I thought, you know, it make it my joke. My
joke is that I think next year, I think it'll be ironic if next year we have more of the Canadian orders attend in the States. That would be funny, you know, if they don't attend in their home country, the prophet's never accepted in their own land. So we had all the American GD people come to Vancouver, and maybe next year we'll have the Canadian GD people go to Austin, Texas.
Well, it'd be especially funny giving the stated view, which I totally understand. I, kind of agree with, except I'm not Canadian, of many Canadian members saying, like, no, we're not going to come to the United States. We're boycotting any travel to the United States. So, which
there's always going to be.
Which, if you're Canadian, I see why you might want to do that. I feel you. But it will be kind of funny if we have more Canadians in Texas than we had Canadians in Canada. So,
well, I definitely listened to the feedback this year. Earlier today, we just did the door prize draw for the door prizes finally, and so the winners will be notified of their door prizes, which are very cool. And I listened to the feedback, which is people wanted to be as affordable as possible next year, and the only way to do that is to not do it in Canada. Is so, and we want to, and the whole purpose behind this also is to be an international group, and so it's been set up that way so we can do that. So yeah, so we're taking it to the States. Austin, Texas. It was either Austin, Texas, or another state, North Carolina. Where was it? South Carolina. I get those two confused for some reason.
North Carolina.
Yeah, right. I compare the hotels there are about the same as Vancouver at that time of year. So yeah, Austin, it's just the prices are 1/5 the hotel costs in Vancouver, and also flights are very affordable to Austin. So Canadians in Canada can actually more affordably travel to Austin than to Vancouver, which is really sad. And that is not the fault of the United States. That is the fault of the government that's been in power forever here, for 10 years now, right? We did this to ourselves. Not that the tariffs don't affect us; those definitely affect us, of course. But yeah, we were in trouble long before. Yeah, the recent election, big trouble. So fingers crossed for everyone in Canada. Pray for Canada, people, please. We need it. But yeah, it's going to be fabulous to hopefully keep bringing together people from different groups and orders and traditions and academic scholars, and keep having fun. The lineup's going to be crazy next year. It's just going to be crazy.
That's great. Oh, by the way, I do have some good news. I haven't told you this yet, but this is a good time. Some of you asked last year about a book that a friend of mine, Vincent Bridges, who passed away back in 2014. So after he died, his fiance and I edited his book on Sir Edward Kelly. It's been out of print now for a couple of years. I've re-edited it, added some more information, including a play that he wrote while staying at Kelly's Donkey in the Cradle residence, involving Kelly and a dark lady and so on. And so anyway, I'll have copies of that next year. That should come out the middle of the year next year, another edition of it, because it's been out.
So exciting.
Yeah. So we can do, and the thing with Kelly and history, well, first of all, I've been doing John Dee's history for a long friggin' time. And just between, you, me, and everyone, and hello world, I'm getting kind of tired of John Dee's personal life, although I'm not going to stop looking at it. But the thing with Kelly is, you're left with speculation after a certain point. You have a couple of great scholars have shown by going through archives in Germany that at least the English government did say that Kelly was a nobleman and where he was from. Now, that's fascinating, and that changed Kelly's scholarship hugely. Most people in the magic world haven't caught up with that. But then, okay, so that. Well, then what else about Kelly? Like, who were his parents? Was his birthday really what John Dee thought it was? All this stuff. So when we release this, we're going to have a subtitle that is a speculative history of Sir Edward Kelly, because a lot of it's based on things like scrying, which, though I am a retired professor, I will tell you the obvious. That's not usually accepted in the academy. In fact, I think it never is, as far as I know. Like, I don't know the answer. I think I'll go into my Enochian temple and scry it. All right. Well, this is what I think. So anyway.
Yeah, you can't footnote scrying session 6th November 1964 for a citation.
Yeah. So
Um,
anyway.
is it confirmed Kelly was a nobleman for sure, do you think? Yes.
Well, it is confirmed that the English crown said he was, and who the people were who said that. And one of those, actually, there's a letter signed by many people. Don't ask me who, because I can't rattle all of their names off, other than there are like 2 Anthonys in the list, but where they're from in Ireland. Now, the question, I guess if you wanted to push the question, you run into the same trouble with everything else with Kelly. Like, was that his real name? Oh, well, Dee says he was born at this time. Well, if he was an instrument of intelligence, and we can be almost certain now that Dee, like 99% sure Dee was, well, and the places that they're going, though, in Poland when they're traveling, they run into people who seem to know them, and it's Kelly they seem to know. So is Kelly his real name? Well, so these papers identify him as a real noble, and they do it with the appropriate Irish titles and so on. So I guess the question is, if his birth date is forged, because some people claim to have found birth records in England that validated what Dee had in his diary, well, then which is true? They can't both be true. So I am not shocked, although some traditional historians seem to be, but it's just like, oh, you mean the government might have lied? Oh dear, my innocence is gone. But clearly,
I can't imagine that.
in the written records about Kelly, some of it has to be wrong, but then Dee did the same thing. Like Dee, in a part of his diary that was taken out and then found later, I don't know if it was in the Bodleian, I think it was, there Dee is writing about that he's traveling with Kelly and his wife, and did it say wife? And well, he's traveling with their wives. That's what it is. So, all right. Well, later he refers to something else, and he conspicuously never mentions people who had to be with them. And we know from her writing that she was with them, and that's Kelly's stepdaughter and her brother, his stepson. So you find later correspondence between the two of them, but Dee never acknowledges that they're there. So, that things aren't consistent in Dee's diary either. So the door for speculation is wide open. Now, what does that have to do with Enochian, really? Not a lot. I mean, the Enochian system, as it's articulated now, is, there's doing magic with it, and then there's getting involved in the kind of interesting history of who these guys were and why they were doing it. So those things overlap, but the only way they really would change Enochian is, well, take something like, okay, the Seal of Amet. As you know, we were just talking about this before this started. You can go through Dee's diary for a while, certainly from like the 5 books of mystery. That could all be faked. And the person isn't Kelly to begin with. He's called Talbot, although we assume he's the same person. But the Seal of Amet is, as Colin Campbell said, it's like a condensation of medieval planetary magic. It could be faked. And the idea that these squares that you're reading the archangel, these are known archangels. I mean, with the art of memory, that could easily be faked. So at what point do you get to where it can't be faked? Because by the time you're into Liber Logaeth, it's like all bets are off. Like if somebody could do that, they're such a genius with such literary talent and such a, well, I don't even care if it's fake, but I don't try to do something like that sometimes. So by the time you get into actual Enochian letters being put into a grid, it's really hard to find any way that it could be fake. But the first part of it all could be. So then that raises the question of, like, one of the things that Vincent Bridges speculated about in his book is that famous knock on Dee's window, and then he finds this crystal, which is allegedly the scrying crystal. And Gustav Meyrink makes a whole scene out of it in a book, The Angel in the West Window, that, oh, and the angels left this crystal, and isn't this cool? And okay, that's great. But what if Kelly / Talbot already was working for someone like, say, William Cecil or someone, and trying to see if Dee is for real, because Dee's sort of shifted his whole focus from navigation and the Muscovy company to scrying. So what if that's Kelly that snuck up and just put a crystal up there, or Talbot? Or, I mean, are they two different people or the same? You can't really prove that they're the same or different. I mean, so that informs a lot of the approaches, which we were also talking about, right? But it all, like, most people tend to approach it through grimoire magic and planetary magic. I approach it through that to some degree. But then that means Dee and Kelly know about it. Since I see, as you know, a lot of structures in the Monas Hieroglyphica in the watchtowers, well, does that mean Kelly knows them? Because we know as scryers, what their sort of structures of consciousness affects what comes through most of the time. So the only real the carryovers from their lives are how much did what these guys knew affect what came through. And I think it'd be naive to say that it didn't affect it at all.
Yeah,
that probably didn't answer your question, but it gave me time for that.
Oh, who cares? Who cares? It says it's better than answering my question. I don't even remember what the question was now. But yeah, the Talbot Kelly naming thing. I mean, I always thought that stuff was sketchy until I reread one biography and then started reading another. And I was paying more, when I first read Woolley's biography when it came out, I was only interested in the magic. So a lot of the history stuff I sort of just, glossed over, wasn't too curious about it, because I felt that I actually just thought I sort of knew the deal. And that, coming out of the 90s and having a very limited range of information available, I was overconfident in 2001, whenever that book came out. But then rereading it and having a closer eye to the history and just being older and knowing how the world works a bit more, right? You get a bit more world-wise and you read history with a different lens. And I started to realize, there's so many shenanigans going on here. There's so much compromising of people through accusations of coining, and so that you can get them to spy. And reading Vincent Bridges' work on Garland showing up in Prague, which, who was probably Shakespeare, right?
That's what I think. Although, like I say, that hasn't got a lot of traction, so I've dropped it until I can novelize it. But
wonderful.
There certainly was no person named Francis Garland or these other Garland brothers. And there is a tradition in art history going back to Dürer, and some of an order of the Rose Garland. And Rudolph paid a lot of money to have that particular painting brought over the Alps to Prague, because it was, I think there was a depiction of his grandfather, the Maximilian, in there, but I may be messing that up. I don't know art history by memory, but you can look at those Garland brothers as a brotherhood for sure. And the fact is, you can't tell find Shakespeare in one place or a play of Shakespeare's produced in one place when a Francis Garland appears in these diaries. But there's all kinds of fun you can do. And the thing is, even the best historians are very limited. There have been big breakthroughs. I talked about the one with Kelly, but there's an Australian writer, Michael Wilding, who wrote a book. I think it was called Making Gold's something Spirits and Swapping Wives. Anyway, the true life adventures of John Dee and Edward Kelly. And then Wilding came out with an update of that. Now, in between those, he wrote the most authoritative, although it's stultifyingly long, but he went through all of the papers that he could find in the British Museum on Edward Kelly. And then the later biography that is by a Czech author draws for its English sources, just uses Wilding. And even in Wilding's book, there are things that have been found out since then that no one, again, he missed Kelly's stepchildren, but he missed other things too. for example, the big discovery of tunnels from the Jewish quarter in Prague, which happened during a flood in the beginning of this century and lead to different places in Prague. That discovery hadn't been made when Wilding was writing, so you can't really speculate. Like when Dee says, so-and-so is going to the Jews, it's like, well, is that Dee or Kelly? It's probably Kelly. But how are they getting there? I mean, and I will just say, this is something that Vincent and Alan and I bounced around just because of the time we were in Prague. And Vincent's fiance, Elishka, who was working in Prague Castle as one of the national guides there. And I was asked her, like, couldn't there be a tunnel from here to here? And it's like, well, there's tunnels all over the place. The Nazis used some of them horrifically. So yeah, that book of Woolley's, I think that you mentioned, I think it was really, really good for its time. It's just that so much more stuff has come to light. I mean, he did some incredible work in like tying Dee to the Stanley family, which no one had done before, but you kind of suspect that the Earls of Derby, and they, by the way, are big patrons of literature later. They're some of Shakespeare's earliest patrons. They're the source of their own Shakespeare conspiracy theory. But, so Woolley tied that together, but there was just a lot more stuff to find. Do you know if he did any ceremonial magic, or if he was just had a purely academic approach?
Yeah, I think he's purely academic, but I have suspicions. There isn't much about him, and I even wasn't able to find out that much about Glyn Perry. I mean, Glyn Perry's, published academically, and so there's a bit more known about him. But do you know much about Benjamin Woolley himself?
I don't. I've tried to find out. I know more about Perry, who I would vent about. I mean, Perry did a great Archconjurer of I mean, that's an incredibly well researched book.
The Archconjurer of England. Yeah,
it's really wonderful, except for anything Enochian, in which case it's useless. It's useless. And
well, yeah, it's not. Yeah. It's not for learning Enochian, but it's well written, and it's going into details that Benjamin Woolley only touched on a lot of the times. But my suspicion around Woolley, the strange thing about Woolley is how, even though his research or his book, The Queen's Conjurer, isn't as detailed and nuanced as Archconjurer of England by Glyn Perry, he did his research in some areas much more deeply, I think. By which I mean he researched more deeply into the magical manuscripts that were not available other than if you went to the British Library and actually thumbed through them. So he spent time in looking at Ashmole manuscripts and everything that you would only expect a practitioner to really care about. So I wouldn't be surprised.
I gave my students back when an assignment in this research class, and I gave them and anyway, everyone in the class had to find one of Woolley's sources. That was great. And if any of those students are out there, I apologize that I had you do that. But the thing is, Woolley went beyond the British Library. He even went to church records around there. And so Woolley had to be in English. Part of the difficulty, I think, that Perry had is Perry's in New Zealand. But I also got the impression and I read Archconjurer a couple times, after a while, that Perry just kind of got tired of Dee, or also Perry was limited by, this is doing a very empirical approach. So you get everything leading up to when Kelly comes to see Dee, is you're getting into what you talked about before. Well, there's coining and there's this and there's that. But some of the things that connect to, say, the Muscovy Company, which Jim Egan has taken a deep dive into, and that's very speculative. But still, what about these agreements that if explorers found land at this place in the New World, Dee would have some right to that land? That's totally missing. Any understanding of the monad or the propoitomata is missing. And so the things that you would do to understand some of it is not there, but also even the question isn't. Like, I don't fault, I mean, Perry is a great researcher, and I don't fault him a bit for not understanding esoterica. Oh, that's funny, Michael. I just saw that. That's hilarious. I didn't know that at all. So having said all of that, like, why doesn't Perry ask the question of, gee, why are these New World places, why do they have the name D? Now, there was a D river near where D lived that had nothing to do with D. Maybe they just liked to spell D, but the questions should have been asked, I think. Now, could I have written that detailed a book? No, I couldn't. So, maybe I'm just jealous.
Yeah, who knows? I wonder if there'll be another major D biography at some point, or really, I think Kelly needs to be done. But is there enough information to do that kind of a biography on Kelly?
I think I've spent more time researching Kelly than Dee, and I think from my perspective, like, I went to the Czech National Archives and looked at real estate records. I mean, the very nice women there looked at me like I was nuts, and they're like, they got someone.
You want to look at 400-year-old real estate?
You know what? And I found neat things like, say, Joanna Kelly could read and write Czech, which most people didn't seem to think that she could. I mean, Edward Kelly certainly couldn't. Supposedly, there's kids or stepkids could, but there's not really any evidence of that. All you have is like Westonia writing in Latin and English, although she supposedly spoke all these languages. So, but mainly I've looked at a couple Czech theses that are either had help getting them translated into English, or one of them was already in English. And the big questions that I have about Kelly, like, where does he come from? And things that Vincent was sure, for example, that he was the person that had the Voynich manuscript. Well, boy, I've dug all over with that. The last place I have to look is to go to like Montpellier, France, and I don't know if I'll live that long or have enough money. And then that Book of Oberon that came out, that is where you get like drawings of
Oberon.
Oberon, and it's in the Folger Shakespeare Library. Okay, well, there is a Weston family, and Kelly's stepdaughters and stepson's last names are Weston. So there's a real temptation to attribute that to Kelly. And I think it's something Kelly had, but you can't prove that. So those are the big things I know that are left. But like, who are his parents? Well, I have a speculative answer to that it will be in that book that comes out next year, but I don't think we're going to find any of that for sure.
And you were saying to me the other day, you're more excited almost to write fiction at this stage.
Yeah, because
which I think makes so much sense after, spending your life, being a professor emeritus of English. Mm-hmm. How could you not want to turn your pen to fiction seriously at some point, because you have such a treasure trove of data, to use a very boring word for, gems of knowledge. And now you get to, carve your own shapes out of them with fiction. And I can't wait to see what you do.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm going to have a lot of fun. We'll see. Now, the books that feature Dee or Kelly have by and large been kind of not real thrilling, but maybe but I'm looking forward to it.
Your friend, the great Deborah Harkness,
I wish my friend. I'm jealous of Deb Harkness. Thank you for that.
Well, we both have an interesting connection to her. She did her dissertation with my PhD supervisor, Nicholas Goodrick Clark. Though I didn't, of course, discover a D manuscript mismarked as geomancy like she did, nor did I even finish my PhD due to joining a Celtic band and touring a little bit too much. And you know her from the D world. I'd love to get
Mhm.
her to a conference. That would be great. I mean, I really should
Well,
invite her just at least to be polite. We should invite
well,
her. We should.
so
So
you
you know,
should, but I will, I would be so. For example, with her
I'm
also,
thinking just as a sign of respect for the work she's
I
done at the
hear you,
very
and that's
least.
beautiful. And I hope you should do it. I wouldn't dare because I've written her twice asking for interviews, and once she said to contact her press agent, and the other time I got her press agent. They have a big All Souls Con at Oxford where all the fans of her novels go. So yeah, and she just came out with another one, but I mean, it was the second one of them that really had a lot of Dee and Kelly stuff. Her research is fantastic. So
yeah. Her my mother and sister were big fans of the books and the TV show, so I did end up watching it. And I watched the second season a second time just because of the D stuff. And D makes an appearance in Elizabeth the Golden Age with Kate Blanchett and a few other films and TV shows. It would be fun to make a super cut of all the appearances of D on screen.
it would be.
But Kelly doesn't get much time. I think there's been some TV shows that might have had both of them over the years, but it would be fun to look at. I think I would be interested, and I think others would be interested to know your thoughts on how Dee and Kelly are presented, or mainly Dee in cinema and TV, and what's the different tact you might take in your fiction writing.
Well, I mean, Dee, by the time that Dee is showing up in modern movies, the critical view of him has shifted from this, dubious, from this guy that was conned by Kelly into the poor misunderstood John Dee. So that's in effect what you get in the one you mentioned before. Was it the Golden Age or the Gold? Where they have Dee show up, and he's showing up and he's advising Elizabeth in 1588, which is totally wrong because he's still in Bohemia.
He's on the continent.
Yeah. So, and it's like doing the things he's probably most famous for. So I think that's how he's presented there. And then he's presented as this evil character in some children's books, but the writer or young adult, not children's, but the writer of that said that it was because he was just tired of seeing Dee portrayed as this wonderful, person. The only place I can think of, I'm sure there are other places, but the only place I can think of where Kelly is portrayed is in Harkness. And I mean, he's an easy target and he just sort of looks like a nut. So that he's presented as a drunk and his wife is presented as a drunk, and then he goes crazy. And I mean, that's an easy way to deal with Kelly, because any way you try to make him a serious character, there's going to be pushback from some direction or another. And you know who they don't deal with? So I guess I'm telling the book, the story, for one thing, through a third person character. I'm telling it from, when I get to that part, from the perspective of Kelly's stepdaughter, because I don't know, it's easier for me to do than try to imagine like why Kelly wants to swap wives and things. It's like it eliminates a lot of things that I don't have to deal with. But someone who's not dealt with, who's really important in these scrying sessions also, other than, Francis Garland, is Francesco Pucci. So I've got a whole theory about him that I'm going to let loose in that. But I'm sure he and Kelly.
That's the nuncio?
No, the papal nuncio is another one. He's the godfather of one of Kelly's kids, and then he's but Francesco Pucci is in England for a while, just like Giordano Bruno is, where he probably knows Dee and probably knows Kelly, although you can't prove that. Then he shows up in Poland, and he's chasing Dee and Kelly around in Poland and driving them nuts, where they're staying at places where Philip Sidney, will die a year later, but where Philip Sidney had stayed on a tour of the continent before. So then it looks to me like an easy bit of speculation would be this is where I start glazing over audiences, and I apologize if I'm doing
Not glazing me over.
But there was,
I think you have the right audience for this right now.
Well, there was so the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, which becomes the subject of a play by Christopher Marlowe, that's in the 1570s, and that's in Paris. Sir Francis Walsingham, the spy master, is there. Philip Sidney is there. Somehow, Walsingham survives it. Vincent's thought on that, which since Vincent is dead, have shamelessly stolen and have novelized. Vincent thought it was Kelly who got them out of there. Okay, so then various other things happen in the 1570s, but it's that same trip where Philip Sidney has been up in Poland. Okay, so wonderful. Then Dee and Kelly go and stay in those same places, and Pucci shows up. Well, Pucci was in Paris at the same time, and then he escapes to England. So there's all this backstory that has to exist that doesn't. And then the whole bit of Kelly marrying and why he does, that's just highly suspicious. And who is this brother Thomas Kelly who shows up nowhere? Suddenly he has a brother named Thomas Kelly, who then later marries rising Czech nobility. It's like, well, that's interesting. So there's a lot of backstory to deal with, but that probably won't help you set up an Enochian temple very well. But there's an incredibly fun backstory.
I love the history, and we can talk history as much as we want together because, hey, this is our show right now. So let's just do whatever we want. But we will definitely need to talk about the workshop we're doing together December 6th here in Vancouver, streamed online for free to all members who paid their dues, who registered for this year. It's not too late to do so, folks. You can attend the conference. There's 2 free lectures viewable on the conference page on arcaneresearchsociety.com. You can go watch those and enjoy them. The audio has been upgraded on all the lectures that we did and will be added to the video with some, end videos to make them look shiny and professional. So that'll be all updated. It took post-production on the conference, took hundreds of hours more than I expected. That was the one thing. That was one of the biggest learning lessons. I didn't estimate how much post-production time would be necessary because it's still not done. It's been nonstop since then. But I also, of course, divided my time so that I could set up next year's conference, get the ball rolling right away. And I was very excited when just a little while ago, the board of directors at the building we're renting in Austin, Texas, confirmed my rental so we have more rooms. We have the, Friday from morning to Sunday at night. We have multiple rooms. We have a kitchen. We have a dining hall. We have workshop rooms for unrecorded magical practices, and then a lecture hall for the lectures. It's going to be great. We actually have a viewer question here that's relevant. So what was new and relevant at that conference? I assume you mean New York is the last conference we just did here in Vancouver and online. Most of the presentations present new and breakthrough information from original research. That's really the sort of the standard that I think is expected. And but we also are open to a wide variety of approaches to this. Like when it comes to Enochian magic, we don't dismiss, for example, the UAP or alien stuff if people have an interesting theory or interesting research, especially like Daniel Rekshan, if you're also an Enochian practitioner and using that and doing your PhD and stuff, which he was when he started with us. There's amazing things to be done. Where you and I are going to talk more about a little alien UAP stuff in regards to these Enochian entities and beings. Even I think later on today when we get really wild toward the end of the podcast.
Yeah, sure. Well,
We'll go off the handle at the end, but it's still the first hour so let's keep our buttons up. What else was new in your opinion about the conference? I mean, P.D. Newman's research was fascinating, new, and very controversial. A lot of the research is controversial. Dr. Sledge gave an outstanding presentation. You can go watch the whole thing right now on our website for free. And his argument for the academy to, pardon my French, but wake the fuck up and get their shit together was absolutely incredible. I mean, he didn't say it in those terms, but that's the TLDR.
I feel certain he would not say it in those terms if he ever.
No, of course not.
As someone who is part of the academy, like.
But his argument is
Yeah.
is really amazingly crafted argument. The way he presents things is very fun.
Oh,
He has
yeah.
a wonderful way of presenting his research. You know that there's a great final point coming, but you never quite see it. I never quite see it coming. When
Right,
he
and
did
that
that
was
thing in
how it,
Amsterdam
yeah.
with Hanegraaff at the end of Sledge's presentation, Hanegraaff is like, "You've basically at the end of your presentation undone my life's work," because because Hanegraaff is very much opposed to some of the classical Yeatsian thesis.
Mhm.
Well, most people are opposed to the Francis Yates
Well, I will
thesis of
say something about
hermetic
Justin
development.
Sledge that I did not expect to warm up to his work as much as I did. I read his master's thesis, which was on the Monas Hieroglyphica, which I translated and with Nancy Turner. And I thought, well, here's another academician avoiding the fact that they don't understand this. Now, I don't think that anymore, okay? But one of the things that Justin will do that most academics, and I'm saying this, as a retired academic, and there's a reason that I didn't sort of come out as an Enochian practitioner very much until I had tenure, and then really got excited about giving workshops and doing things after I retired. Okay, but so Justin keeps learning and consuming information and is consuming it the way that you have to do if you intend to teach it. Because, if you teach something and you don't understand it, your students are going to know that. And it's clear he knows his stuff, and he is not just kind of stuck in the same shtick. And if he, he now has all these online classes, and they're really well done. I mean, I don't even presume to teach Agrippa. I just say, go watch Justin Sledge's videos on that.
I had high expectations for his Agrippa course that he, put free online. It made me, I didn't think I could.
I apologize. I just stepped right on your toes, didn't I?
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. We're friends. This isn't our. It may be only our second podcast, but it's far from our second conversation, eh? Yeah. Let's get rambly. Let's ramble and rove over the topics we want. And people, my audience is well accustomed to the tangential nature of this podcast format that we do. The chaos is fun. Where were we talking? Yeah, something about
what was new at the conference? I think that was New York.
Yeah, what was new? So many different things. Sledge's. What was I saying? Yeah, I totally forgot it. Oh well.
Well, and P.D. Newman's bit on the Philosopher's Stone and so on was just awesome, and I had the. Great,
sparked an ongoing conversation and debate. Brent Edwards, thank you. Okay, thank you, Brent. Agrippa. Yeah, so I had high expectations going to Dr. Sledge's Agrippa course on YouTube for free. And it blew me away because I actually was naive enough to think he would just go through the three books of occult philosophy and explain it from an academic point of view. He didn't do anything like that. What he did was so much more remarkable and fascinating. He did an entire hermeneutic journey into the juvenile draft, which really shouldn't be called that, as you learn in the course, because it's a complete draft. He just filled it out later on with more stuff. But some of his arguments, like the fact alone that Agrippa was essentially triumphing a hermetic interpretation of Christianity, and fascinating factoids, like the fact that Agrippa was able to present in Italy, I believe it was in Italy, and say basically point blank that he thought that hermetic Christianity was the ultimate form of Christianity, the truest form of Christianity. And he was able to say that publicly and, not get burnt at the stake and live. And that people were okay with that. I mean, it tells us so much about the culture intellectually at the time in at least that part of Europe. Obviously there was, and also placing his Catholicity within the context of the Protestantism of Germany, where he was mostly living and teaching, was also a fascinating adventure into aspects of Agrippa I never anticipated. And so I can't speak highly enough, like you,
Yeah.
of Dr. Sledge's courses. And I look forward very much this over Christmas to doing the Heckalot course that he's just finished up on, because that was actually the one I voted for over the Agrippa the other year, but he did the Agrippa got more votes, and I'm glad it did. I'm glad it did. Yeah. But what else was new at the conference? God, who else?
There was a lot of discussion of different approaches. I mean, that was one of my from a practitioner perspective. That's something that I've always wanted to do, is since the way that Alan and I did set up our Enochian temple is not, I don't know, it's not whatever doctrinaire approach is. It's like it is nice to be able to discuss with people, like, why do you do things this particular way? One thing we never got into that I hope we get into this coming year is, how do people charge the tablets? The great David Jones, who he passed away sadly, but I mean, he was just, and I will repeat my suspicion that he is indeed Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline, show yourself. I've looked all over for you. I'm convinced that was Ian Ron's handing off his project to David Jones, who is not alive now. There, I've said it first, even though I'm probably wrong. Okay, so
I asked Maria Montgomery on the phone the other night. We had our first chat after years of me studying her work on her fabulous Facebook group, and she doesn't think it was David R. Jones, but who knows? I mean, she was his protege, his last protege.
I asked her the same thing, but like, if
you asked her the same thing,
are you gonna say, oh yeah? I asked David Jones if he was, and his answer to me, I still got was, haha, that's very funny. It's like, okay, but you didn't say no. So I'm going to perpetuate this rumor, David.
Yes, okay. If you don't say no, you get what you can't complain when people hypothesize. And who else could it be? Because what is the likelihood that someone would be that good of an Enochian and a D scholar, that careful, that meticulous, and no one knows, and no one's heard of them? How would someone like that exist in such isolation?
Well, and they went over all those, the three people that were going in the early aughts that were going through D manuscripts the most in the British Museum, I have on good authority from one of them, were the person who used the pseudonym Ian Rons, who used to run the Magical Review, Alan Thorogood, and then David Jones. When David Jones generously shared all his Enochian work with me, he had to divide it up by manuscript, sort of like the organization of Kline. Now, that doesn't mean that he was Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline may well be sitting in our audience going, ha, 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 I got them. But
I hope so.
Because I'd love to meet the person. But the meticulousness with which he went through things, like comparing all of, and this was something David Jones was doing, comparing all of the different transcriptions of Enochian, Regardes compared to Aaron Leach's, compared to, and then he has this whole appendix where he's going through and pointing out who is mistranscribed what. And then he's surprised, he says, when he says, surprisingly, the most accurate is Regardi. Well, I was surprised by that too, although you figure how many editions has that black brick gone through from the Stella Manchatina. So there is some logic to why that is. But, James has all these errors.
I'd be surprised if Regardi had the least errors.
Well, this is according to Kevin Kline, and it's, I think in that appendix, it may be, I think he's just looking at the calls. Okay. I could go pull it out and say that, but I mean, he was surprised to find that.
Wouldn't that be because Regardi was publishing the calls he was given when he went through the GD? Or maybe that he got from Crowley, perhaps, as a secretary.
I think it's because that book has gone through so many. I mean, the first black brick that came out, there are just like spectacular errors in the Hebrew. Whoever's editing the book, I mean, they're not a scholar of Hebrew, and who is going to be a scholar of the Enochian until people who are using what's in that in practice are like, this letter is wrong, this letter is wrong. I think it's just because it's gone through so many editions. I mean, that's
Yeah, and it gets tricky. One of the problems with the people have transcribing Golden Dawn Enochian often is it's sometimes people get confused what's original Enochian and where the Golden Dawn are adding in their vowel sounds. So you'll find a lot of calls that are a mixture of the original Enochian with a few of the vowel sounds added in as if they're actual letters, when in fact they should just be vowel sounds added by the GD to make it pronounceable. Yeah. So it
yeah.
gets
I
confusing, right?
mean,
Right. So like a lot of people write, you'll see Enochian calls where they're writing out Zod, right?
mhm,
But in fact, it
sure.
would, in the Enochian, it would just be the
The
Z,
yeah.
the Z,
So
ZZ, Canadian American.
oh yeah, that
Um,
was another that the Summa Sacra Magica that David Rankin presented. That was pretty cool.
Outstanding. Yeah. All the presentations were outstanding. And so yeah, people, you can go check them out. They're still you can still attend the conference, and that also gets you access to the workshop that we're doing coming up. And let's move into talking about what we're
Mhm.
going to do at the workshop. Or let's maybe start with the talking about the different aspects of Enochian magic and the different things that people do with it. That's something we wanted to get into. So there's the first part of the system, the planetary grimoire of the Heptarchia Mystica, where there's the kings and princes and the subservient spirits and ministers that can be used for planetary magic and for conjuration. And then there's the second part, which is the Watchtower system, very famously the Great Table, then divided in the later manuscript prior to the Golden Dawn. It wasn't the Golden Dawn that
Mhm.
separated the Great Table and created the Tablet of Union. People think it was, but it wasn't. It was done in a
Mhm.
previous manuscript that we still debate who authored. Right, it was still a
Mhm.
big debate
Well,
over.
it was done in D. and Kelly's manuscript. I mean, it's and there's no debate that that's Dee's handwriting and Dee is tabling it out. I mean, it
So
was done.
the manuscript expanded in Practical Angel Magic by Stephen Skinner, you think is because Skinner presents it as there's a
Yeah.
9,000 word manuscript that sometime between Dee's
Mhm.
era and before the Golden Dawn got expanded to 90,000 words.
So
And
that so remember the magical review, there was a really there was this really nasty exchange about that argument,
yeah,
and I won't regurgitate the whole exchange, but it's pretty clear that the source of the manuscript that Skinner and Rankin published, I mean, I'm not arguing about when it was published, and I'm not arguing about whether there was a continuous tradition or not. Okay. One of the things they were excited about is, look, there's this Dr. Rudd and there's a continuous tradition. There's problems with that, but there's problems with like friggin' everything that you're looking at in manuscripts. Okay. But the source of what is there is clearly true and faithful relation, because there are some things in other manuscripts that don't make it in. And so part of the kind of nasty exchange was whether or not Dee and Kelly tabled out a tablet of union. And so, and by the way, in our, just a quick side note, and then I want to come back to Tablet of Union if it's all right. But one of the things I hope we do is, you're the expert on the Heptarchia and stuff. I mean, I don't really do that much with it. You've done a lot with that. I've worked with setting up the temple, charging the temple, but mainly with the watchtowers and Tablet of Nalvaj. And partly it's connected to structures that I saw when Nancy and I were translating the hieroglyphic monad. So I'll get back to that in a minute. But so the Tablet of Union, in the manuscript Skinner and Rankin are looking at, there's the 4 watchtowers and there's the Tablet of Union tabled out. So the argument is that that was never done in Dee and Kelly's manuscripts except for one place, and it's not as clearly tabled out as then it becomes in Casaubon. So one could argue, I don't argue this, by the way, I think they did use something like a Tablet of Union, but one could argue that Casaubon, by the way he set the type, he moved marginalia into the middle of the page, and so it looked like, oh, here's the Tablet of Union, and they never call it that anywhere else. They call it a black cross. So the argument I would make is that the Tablet of Union, what it represents, you can't conceive of in 3 dimensions anyway. It's the same structure that we'd now call a hypercube that you get in the Monas Hieroglyphica in Theorem 20, except he doesn't have the language for that. And so he talks about it in these Christian terms of like, here's this cube of space here in what we'd consider Malkuth, and here's heavenly Jerusalem, which by what he has in Theorems 21 and 22, you could place in like Tiferet of Messiah. In other words, you have to have some magical, Kabbalistically based magical knowledge to see what he's doing. So now, whether he called it a tablet of union or a black cross, like I could really care, but I think he did use that. That's just my argument. But the person who was attacking Skinner and Rankin clearly saw it as an error and that they were wrong. I mean, I would just say, well, that person attacking them was right in that the source of that manuscript is true and faithful relationships and not these original manuscripts. But it doesn't really change anything about the Tablet of Union unless, you know, you want to call it a black cross. Crowley called it a black cross. I mean, okay. To me, it's like, does it work? And how does it work?
And that's what we're going to focus on today more of, because that's what we're focusing on at the workshop. We're doing a workshop of practical magic. Oh, how dare we? How dare we do such a blasphemous thing? I can't wait. I can't wait either. It's going to be fun. Yes, I will do a bit on. I will do a segment of that on the Heptarchia in the morning. You'll take the afternoon, and then the evening we'll do like some roundtable stuff and you know, have some more Q&A stuff, and so people will get a full spectrum of both my specialty and yours. And but I want to talk more about yours because again, I already know mine. And one of the reasons I specialized so much over the last 6 years in the Heptarchia was because I was taking a purist approach, because I've been doing GD my whole life since the mid 90s, early 90s even technically. And well, you know, we start with the Betty and Schuler stuff, and Jeffrey James of course was my favorite one of the texts, but Don Craig and the GD stuff was the easiest inroad to Enochian at that time. I think the easiest inroad is a more traditional approach through the writings of, well, you name it, Aaron Leach, Scott Michael Stenwick, the list goes on. There's a bunch of good stuff now to get into it. So I just started specializing in the Heptarchia because I wanted to go sequentially. And then the next step after the Heptarchia, in my opinion, would be the 19-day self-initiation into the watchtowers as delivered by the angels to Dean Kelly. And then you start working the watchtowers. If you want to take a purist approach, and by purist I define that in the sense that, well, the way we define that is as we're sticking to the original material, basically. That's, I think, the simplest definition of it, though. It's not incredibly I don't think depurism is a very useful term. I tend to call it traditionalism. Though, of course, me and George Wilson had a big argument the other night over what even is traditionalism. And then we started talking color theory for 3 hours, I think, into the wee hours. So, yeah, well,
that's another whole nother thing, isn't it? And whether or not you make those little truncated tablets on your pyramid, which like I have, but you know, I'm not as rigid as a lot of people. I'm like, well, you can if you want to. I mean, I like not doing it, but something that I plan to do in the next couple of years is go through, and my first teacher of Enochian, Vincent Bridges, insisted you need those truncated pyramids. But then we went through
I don't know if you
that's
do.
another thing. So here's what I would like to talk about, as I've already told you. I would like to talk about how you charge the tablets. There are a couple of approaches, and what David Jones did was charge them the way you would with traditional Agrippan magic. That is not how Alan and I charge them. And I'd like to run through the way we charge them. Since then, I mean, I've done it both ways, and I think the way that we did it honestly worked better, because you're dealing with something kind of, we thought, Alan and I guess now I should just say I thought, although I think he's around hanging out with us. If you look at the Enochian the way he and I and Vincent and some others did, it's a magical system that ain't from around here. You can look at the Monas Hieroglyphica as maybe setting the foundations. You can look at Agrippan style grimoire magic or medieval planetary magic as setting a foundation. But once you get to the watchtowers, which is what I've spent most of my time going over, that and the holy table, and looking at what is this grid, where you use this grid and you make a holy table, you make the tablet of Nalvaj, you make protective lamans, go through all of that. Now you're dealing with something that isn't from this earth. So do you need to use earth-based magic? That's another whole discussion, but I want to talk about charging it. And then I want to talk about how to set up an Enochian temple, and then what you do in that temple. So in a short form, for those of you who have studied with me before, I mean, we had here, and I still have here, a continuously running Enochian temple. Alan used to call it an Enochian installation. It was like you set it up and it runs. So then what you're doing after that in going in is kind of syncing your aura, frequency, whatever you want to call it, with that. We would do that with a setup that's online. You can Google it. It's called Ilarian's Watchtower, which is basically a modified SIRP. And we looked at the system itself as pentagrammatic. So you're setting this up with a modified lesser pentagram, a modified supreme pentagram. You find these traditional pentagram attributions. The first place you find them is in D. and Kelly's work. I mean, later, yeah, you get it with Levi, but Levi also has other attributions. Okay, that footnote aside. So,
fun fact, if I can add something,
Ooh.
My friend Letty Peterson, who did the longest podcast with me ever, just over 6 hours, famously. Yeah, right. He runs Hermetic Science Enterprises out of Scotland, and published just recently the groundbreaking work by Doctors Tony Fuller, Anglo-Catholic Clergy in the Golden Dawn. Go buy your copy today, folks, because that is the best history book on the GD, hands down, ever written. He mentioned that it's in also another publication of his, the Grimoire of the Scots Discovery of Witchcraft, that the first in time a pentagram is actually drawn in the air in magic, a la LRP, is in the Discovery of Witchcraft. So it actually goes back very far to, and what's interesting about that is it's the same time as D. and Kelly, of course, same era of magic. So there's the pentagram being traced in the air in that grimoire, de facto grimoire, we should probably call it. It wasn't maybe intended to be a grimoire for practitioners, but hey, well, when you say don't do this and this is how you do it, what do you expect to happen?
Well, not only that, the only way that he can publish that is to say don't do it.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, I will bring along that wooden yo-yo. In fact, Michael, I could find it right here.
Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for watching. Thanks for everyone for being here. Well, I'm having fun with Dr. Burns. It's cool to do a follow-up.
There we are.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What have you done? Michael Lynch, you madman. I was on Zoom with Michael earlier today and he showed me his book by the great Vancouver Island Victoria bookbinder Paul Tronson. Yeah, who's friend of a friend, and I look forward to getting over there and hanging out in his bookshop all day while he crushes gemstones to make inks for his engravings. I don't know what he does the old school style of bookbinding, and the books he does are amazing. If I had a third kidney, I tell you.
What would you do with that third kidney?
I would sell it and buy one of his books.
Oh, I got you. Oh, yeah. I might do that with one of my two. But so just I'm going to wrap up what I was going to say, and then I have nothing else to say until I go on some other unprompted digression. So once you set up a temple, then the question, it seems like no one asked, because either people are already doing this and they're not doing it in temple space, or they never get that far, is okay, now you've got this Enochian temple up and running. You even got the tablet of Nalvaj set up, and you have some theory about what it's for, because Dia and Kelly never say, although you can tease it out of there. Okay, great, it's running. Now what do we do? Well, maybe we'll do all the calls. Okay, we've done that. And there are various reasons, right, why you should do them on the solstice. The winter solstice would be the best time. But all right, so we're doing that. What else are we going to do? Oh, we'll scry the ethers. Okay, we've done that. Maybe don't want to do that again. Maybe I want to do it all the time. Okay. Is that the end of what you can do with Enochian magic? Because very few people seem to do other things with the Enochian itself. And one of the things Alan and I were working on is what about making rituals with that system? Vincent made these whole great Ea, Ida, that's in Enochian, that's the name of God in the highest, pentagrams. And he was so like tickled with himself. He was like, see, this is the first Enochian new implement since D. and Kelly. It's like, okay, but there's some very easy and logical things you can do once you get a temple set up and running that we would do all the time. It's just, it takes a kind of an understanding of a temple. And my understanding of that temple space is maybe not the same as the next person. So that's something I want to talk a lot about. But to just answer my own question quickly, one of the easy things to do is things like you would do with any other magical system based on this. If we're doing some things on the solstices, what are you doing on the equinox? Are there cross-quarter things? Like we passed Samhain. Well, Samhain is a great time to go into the temple and open the veil. It's not even spooky. It's just fun, you know. Can you use it as a meditation space? There are particular dimensions you can tease out of the Monas Hieroglyphica of how Dee probably saw an oratory. And I know people from Golden Dawn style backgrounds like myself tend to think, oh, it should be a golden triangle. Well, in the monad, you said it as a monad. Whatever one is, it's one by one by one. It's, you know, you can make it as small or big as you want. And that's your Enochian space. And you have a watchtower on each wall. You have a tablet, an altar in the middle with the holy table and the seal of Amat and the four underneath and all that. And then the top of that is constantly rotating through it. So it's running. And I use mine as a meditation space per an interesting argument also made by Bridges. And you can find it online in this article called Angels in the DNA, where he was looking at combinations of Enochian letters in the same way that people look at the I Ching and relating it to transfer RNA as a means of evolution. If that sounds like woo-woo and maybe he was smoking the joy juice or something, I have no idea. Look at the article, find it yourself. But I will say it matches with my somewhat sober experience. So I love to go in, do a watchtower, do a middle pillar. And when I was writing about magic, I'm right now finishing another project that's not about a magical topic. It's art history. But when I'd just go in there before I started writing. It was a rush. So that's one of the things I want to talk about with the people at the conference. Okay. How are you setting up an Enochian temple, or do you just like go outside and do Enochian? And then what are you doing there? And by the way, if you're just going outside and doing Enochian, well, are you looking for power spots? But like, I still want to go to Bell Rock and Sedona and do the calls. One of the things I
Sign
found,
me up.
Oh man, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Of course, that's not a place where we can hold Enochiacon, or you can hold Enochiacon very inexpensively. It's pretty pricey. Sorry, I use we a lot, but
that's fine. You are, in my opinion, you're the co-founder of Enochiacon.
You've done you're the person that has done all the work, brother. Well, you have got this running. I just run my mouth a lot.
Yeah. Well, it grew out of our last podcast. So
yeah,
so
that was
the magic was both of ours. And you've put in a lot of work in the year coming back here to Vancouver, and it's, yeah, you know, it's all these things. They all let's take the faithful D approach. They all belong to God. We're just faithful servants.
Well, and there seems to be a current pushing to get this stuff out, and that's pretty cool.
It's I've always wondered why there wasn't more of a, like, you know, Enochian is one of the things that has spread the most into culture and pop culture, even, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I got to like do a little consulting at the end of Supernatural, and they had an Enochian scholar making
Yeah.
sure that they had a linguist. They actually had a linguist who considers himself the greatest linguistic Enochian scholar, and maybe he is, for all we know. I don't know his name. I talked to Misha Collins a lot about him, because the guy would come in and give them lectures on how to do the sentences, whereas they could have easily just slapdashed it together when they were doing the Enochian on this, the famous Supernatural show that did 15 seasons here in Vancouver. It's basically a rite of passage in the film industry here to work on that show. My buddy was a casting director, and they gave him only one rule: only hire hot people. of course, right? He's like, I was like, was it fun working on the show? He's like, no. No, it wasn't. All I did was look at hot people and stamp them approved or not approved. I'm like, what an industry, the film industry, eh? So it's entered pop culture in such a massive way. The internet, I've even noticed, is now starting to get Enochian AI slop. I was checking out a video earlier today, and it starts off by saying, and they get tens of thousands of views. They dominate the information scene, unfortunately. I mean, well, AI is obviously killing YouTube and Spotify. AI is killing it all, or turning it into a transhuman dystopia, or whatever you want to think about it.
I was ranting,
but it started off by saying John Dee was a famous alchemist who met the scryer Edward Kelly. I'm like, the first thing it said was wrong. The first thing it said was wrong. It's like, come on.
Can I tell you my AI experience with that? I posted it on one of these Facebook groups I'm on. Because I was messing around with Chat GPT, as many people do. And thank you, Occultology. Many thanks. So I asked, there was someone who was talking about all letters as waveforms. Okay, that's an idea I'm very interested in. I thought what this person was saying was absolute BS, so I won't name it. But I thought, okay, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, based on what this person is saying about alphabets, what can you tell me about the Enochian alphabet? It spat out Enochian letters that were not Enochian. I mean, and I understand, like, Enochian, there's not a Unicode for Enochian, like with Hebrew or with Cyrillic or something, but like, these are not Enochian, okay? But underneath, it's like, okay, this is vortex right, this is torsion left, and it's like utter bullshit. And so, but it was using the lingo of this other person. Okay, so I wrote back and I said, these are not Enochian letters. Can you try again? Please use letters that are actually in the Enochian alphabet. And then it did the usual Chat GPT of like, I am so sorry, and forgive me, it's so groveling. And here they are. So then it spit out a graphic that my late husband made that was on our, and I was like, okay. Now, what it was doing was, of course, searching and finding graphics, because there wasn't any Unicode for an alphabet, and I caught it with that. So now it's pulling this graph. And I said, yes, that was made by my late husband, J. Allen Moore. And then so it groveled again and said, oh, yes, you're right, I should cite my sources. And I'm like, well, yes, you effing well should, but of course you don't. So, and anyway.
If it did, we'd all realize how much it's plagiarizing from human beings.
Oh, gosh.
Poorly.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my venting. Thanks for letting me vent.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, folks, Occultology channel member, join my channel. There's tons of amazing bonus videos and lessons, and there's a whole workshop on invocation writing. You get tons of stuff, and it's just $5 a month. Occultology says, I've used AI to translate Enochian phrases I've received in ritual. That's fascinating. We got to talk more about that.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about that, brother.
What you got, some of it. That would be
yeah. He and I chat on a Discord sometimes, so I'll get some information on that from him for you, and we'll chat about it. That's interesting. That is very interesting. I'd be curious to see what they say. Yeah. So one of the interesting things we're going to do at the workshop is, the approach you and your late husband, J. Allen Moore, may he rest in splendor and glory. I certainly can't say his name without feeling like the air just sort of thicken and buzz around me with this light. It's really nice, because sometimes when I say the names out loud of a deceased person, I get a very different experience. So that's actually quite notable. Yeah. When he first passed, I was heartbroken. I deeply wished, of course, that we would get to meet in person, and he'd play his harp and I'd play my uilleann pipes, and we'd rejoice and transcend in ecstatic Celtic musical bliss
He wanted
to
do
the
that.
higher planes of reality. Like in Zardoz, we would go to the second level, you know. So God rest him. And what you guys do is a Golden Dawn style approach to Enochian magic, which of course I love and do, and I'm constantly and very excited to integrate more of the innovations you two have done with that. That's one of the things I'm excited to get out of all of this. But one of the things, what I'll be presenting is sort of is the bare bones, as close as we can reckon it to the purist approach of just using the grimoire prayers and conjurations and all that. And I'll be showing people how I do that, and we'll do it together. We will be doing that Enochian ritual together in the morning of the conference, of the workshop, on December 6th this year, in just less than 30 days. And then we'll move on. So there'll be multiple styles of Enochian done in multiple aspects of the system. We'll have the conjuration aspect of the heptarchia that we work on, and then you'll do your thing, and then we'll go from there. It's going to be a very diverse workshop of Enochian magic.
Yeah. So and you know, one of the things, you know, I've never thought of doing it that I do it necessarily in a Golden Dawn approach, because I learned it that way before I was part of the Golden Dawn. But yeah, one thing I do want to say is that the way we reorder, we thought, in fact, or we're sure that there was a kind of blind, and have shown why and have written about it. I presented on it in Enochiacon last year, had a separate class on Enochian stellar alchemy where a couple people got far enough along to make that, two people in particular got it really buzzing. So here's some food for thought to also think about different Enochian approaches. Okay. When I have gone into a Golden Dawn temple and done Enochian, I use their tablets. Their tablets have lettering that is slightly different from mine, and some are in parts of the tablets that are quite significant. So I do feel a big difference in the one that Alan and I used, and independently someone else in Italy corrected tablets the same way. So there's something, though, that goes with the Golden Dawn tablets behind them, is you have this whole egregore of different Golden Dawn orders. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, but you're going to get a different flavor of it. I think a big part of it is the letters that we corrected the tablets to are different. And there are also some things we did with the Holy Table that are different. That we can talk about at the conference, because it's a long thing. And also we use Nalvaj, the Golden Dawn, so far as I know, unless they're doing it, I don't know, in some super high adept grade I don't know about, they're not really using the tablet of Nalvaj, as far as I know. And if you know different, you can't say so, because you'd be breaking your vows.
Oh no, I could say so if I want. But I don't know of anyone doing that in the Golden Dawn. I mean, definitely there's been a lot of development in Golden Dawn Enochian, but we do know, like, by the time the tradition developed into New Zealand and Whare Ra, we know they Enochian was not one of their favorite things. Like, even though it's originally an explicit Christian form of magic, you could say, because of who Dee was as a priest. Even though because the Whare Ra New Zealand temple, for those who don't know, was very Christian in its focus. Golden Dawn orders contain people of any religion, and as the new history book by Tony Fuller demonstrates, was full of Anglicans and even a Catholic priest and maybe a rabbi here or there, or at least one, I think. Certainly, there's certainly rabbis in it now these days. But a lot of them were very pagan. A lot of the original members were very Bohemian pagan. But the Fade Ra group was quite Christian, so you'd think they would cleave to the Enochian system, which has this beautiful history in Tudor England and, you know, the reign of Elizabeth, Shakespeare, and Dee. But they didn't actually practice it that much, apparently, or think that highly. So I'm told. But today, lots of development has happened. Olin Rush's work in Enochian magic's remarkable.
Awesome. Yeah.
Not in the GD tradition, but Benjamin Rao. I was talking about him with earlier today with our member Michael Lynch there. Yeah, so I don't know about Nalvaj in particular. I think Aaron Leach might have done the most work, if any, on that in particular.
Well, David Jones, he did. David Jones did a lot of it. Alan and I did a lot of it. Vincent did a lot on it, but most people, like you're saying, don't use it. And so whatever, and there are so many different Golden Dawn orders. So, and then I'm saying this as someone who values the Golden Dawn a lot, but you also have to get your mind around the fact that if you have a problem with Crowley, some of the best Enochian stuff is Crowley's. Now, you may have to refine it. You may have to change some of the letters because he's sloppy, and you kind of get an idea that maybe he'd say, "Oh, that was a blind," when it's like, no, you were sloppy, but whatever. So I don't really think there is a sort of doctrinaire Enochian in the Golden Dawn. And thank you for saying earlier that this exploding it in 4 directions, that's implicit in Dee's work. And anyone who tells you different just doesn't understand Dee's work well enough to know that and understand how he manipulated things. Now, why do you get the directional attributions they make? That's a great question with a long answer. And, but so I've never thought of what I did as a GD style Enochian. I thought that I fell in with this group of people who were pretty cool and liked to do Enochian. And then later I found out a couple of them were,
Yeah, well, I only call it that because, as far as I'm concerned, if you're bringing in watchtowers or pentagrams and stuff like that, that makes it GD style. So especially if you're using the colored watchtowers that are elemental.
Yeah.
Like the difference between D's, like white, red, black, and green, and the Golden Dawn's yellow, black, red, and
I agree with you there. That's absolutely Golden Dawn.
Blue.
But the question I was going to raise with this for you, though, Frater, is take a modified watchtower, which is basically kind of an SIRP. So you've got Enochian in it. You've got the opening of the veil in it. So whoever crafted that, which is a great question, I think the answer to that is shifted over the years, largely because of some of Tony Fuller's arguments that were in the Light Extended about the Golden Dawn cipher manuscript. But somebody understood Golden Dawn, so in that founding group of the Golden Dawn, understood Enochian really well, because they do all of this stuff right. And the pentagrams, well, it is a pentagrammatic system. And is that implicit in the Enochian itself? No, what it's implicit in is the Monas Hieroglyphica. It's absolutely implicit there. So you have this 5-7 system, and it's also in the Propoitomata Aphoristica, that's such a deep dive. I discourage anyone from taking it. So whoever wrote particularly the SIRP, which we use to set up our whole temple, knew Enochian really well. And to go back to the argument you were making with Skinner and Rankin, I mean, that begs the question, was there a continual tradition, or did somebody just who came up with this? Because they knew stuff really well, better than most adepts in the Golden Dawn, at least until recently. Okay, I'm done with that lecture. Next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Yeah, next. Oh, well, let's so what can we use Enochian magic for? I like, in the Heptarchia that it is a planetary grimoire, but obviously I feel that in my work with the king, prince, and ministers of the days, and especially with the chief spirits, Karmara and Haganel, and Karmara is seems to be a aspect of Oriel or a form of Oriel, or perhaps however these archangels work, a being servient to him. But there's a theurgic element as well as just the traditional grimoiric approach that you can take planetarily of, influencing your life in the world and to improve it, right? There's obviously that sorceress element that you can focus on, and I've found great success with it, even with very mundane things. I think it works extremely well as a grimoire for changing and tweaking your life in some powerful ways. Yes, I've more shockingly experienced prophetic things from it, which I've talked about already, and I don't want to get into now because it's a very emotional. But then with the watchtowers, my experience of them is mostly in the Golden Dawn, either working with sometimes the lesser servient angels to get effects in the world, like in the Heptarchia, but more commonly, my experience with the watchtower has been, primarily using it for initiatory effects, which is what Aaron Leach, of course, calls the liturgical Enochian of the Golden Dawn. And I think that's not a bad term for it or a bad way to think of it. It is quite liturgical, and it is hyper focused on a few things. But then I was talking, just again, as I said on the phone the other night, to Maria Montgomery, and we were talking about using the parts of the earth to affect politics and world change. And she actually said something really, she said, you don't actually need to work with the parts of the earth to really have a powerful impact on politics or rulers and leaders and princes of the earth. You can actually just use it. She said it's almost better to go to the watchtowers and work with the kings, the kings and the seniors. And I won't say more on that because I'll leave it to her to say stuff. She's going to do a presentation, I believe, next year at Enochiacon on the seasons and the operation of the watchtowers within the seasons. I don't want to spoil too much, but I believe that's what we're going to have her do. So that'll be very exciting.
I really look forward to that. And that's the kind of thing I was talking about, which is you get your temple up and running. So then what are you going to do in it? And it's, if you look at what Dee and Kelly are told that this supposedly contains, I mean, what you've got is a alchemical vessel. And I see it more as how these, I don't ever work with just one square, and neither did Alan. And as far as I know, none of the people I've done Enochian magic with, except maybe yourself. We haven't actually done Enochian magic. We've done other magic, but and there are things implicit, like this is a great table of earth. Well, there's good reason for locating that at like wherever, like Tifereth in the world of Asaya, for it being the most obvious. But like if this is earth of earth, and then within it here's earth of earth of earth, well, so this is a great table of earth. Well, is there a great table of water, a great table of all of the others? I mean, we haven't had a whole lot of success teaching the great table of earth yet, but I mean, so, and there's the god name that spirals. Well, you can make a god name and spiral it the other way. I wouldn't really advise doing that except in really specific circumstances, but I don't know.
Yeah, we tend to stick to clockwise directionality, which is why I'm so glad that the consensus now seems to be that the lettering on the great table is also, on the holy table, is also clockwise, which is what I thought. It's been debated hotly up until recently, and now the debate is over, and I'm very pleased that where I fell in the debate was sound. And but the system is flexible, as you've said many times, because again, like, we're these are physical representations of spiritual realities, and the spirits have always told me they don't care which direction I write their names, because they always point out, as Hagenel pointed out to me, I can read it either way, which makes perfect sense, which was the most hilarious answer I could have ever imagined, because if someone wrote out my name backwards and said, what do you think? It's like, I mean, I can still read it. I still know it's my name. Well,
there's a great section in Dee's diary where the angels are like quizzing him about how you transform letters, and it's clear, like Dee's understanding it in terms of Euclidean transformations, and he's doing just that. It's like, oh, we'll write it out this way, now put it this way, and you're right, it goes clockwise around. But there was that. But that's a area that has really kind of progressed this century. I mean, in the 90s, no one was talking about that. If you remember the old Enochian Yahoo group, I mean, there were wild conversations there and some real good conversations, but a lot of what we're doing now is just from work people have done in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, it's an amazing time to be studying this. Not to mention the manuscripts that have been digitized that up until now were inaccessible unless you went there and sorted through them, right? The Woolley biography is an example of one of those manuscripts that, he writes things in his biography that are footnoted to that manuscript, and it wasn't until last year that manuscript got digitized, and then Peterson used it to update his absolutely fundamental. For anyone who wants to get Enochian magic, in my opinion, this is the book you should start with. Joseph Peterson's 5 books of mystery, the Mysteriorum Libri Quinque, which does not translate as the mysterious book of Kinky Libras, but the 5 books of mystery. Yeah, so there you go. Start with that, folks. And so those manuscripts, like, there's so much food for thought in them. And again, and I think the Practical Angel Magic manuscript, I forget is it 3191? No, it's 307.
No. I could go grab my Klein.
Yeah. So like, again, the Klein, who really, there hasn't even been much, people I think are still digesting the Klein book that came out now 5 years ago. Right, like I'm still digesting it. I haven't read it page by page yet. I spend a few hours in it and only get through 10, 20 pages at most, and have a bunch of pages of notes, and then I think, okay, well, how do I, where's the pearls in this that I can use? And there's a lot of them. Yeah. I'm at the stage of trying to figure out my own. Well, I'll save that for later. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that it's worth reading through Klein for a couple of reasons. That you see how things change between one manuscript and another in some cases, and in some cases where they don't. But the other thing is all those manuscripts are degrading, and as there's been more interest, it's kind of like with the Voynich, it's harder and harder to see, but that's because the manuscripts are degrading. Or if you have an edition of John Dee's personal diary, which isn't in Klein because that's the Spirit Diaries. So the Spirit Diary is basically just its notes in an ephemeris. Well, Edward Fenton, who must have been, I've heard he was just incredible at getting marginalia out and deciphering it. Well, thank God he did, because it's degraded so much that people have seen it this century, who are very, very good with manuscripts, have told me there is no way that they can find what Fenton found there. And it's not a criticism of it. It's in gratitude that he pulled it out, because everyone accepts that he was great at reading and pulling information out of old manuscripts. There was a comment about Rowe and the Earth table individual squares. Yeah.
So we're talking about the northern angle, the northern watchtower. What's the point about the squares in it?
Well, he did an exploration of that. I haven't explored his exploration too much. I tried to look at some of his early graphic renderings of different Enochian temples, and his approach was it is. That's another thing that made me think that he was David Jones, by the way, but I've beat that horse enough.
Is it? Michael Lynch says Klein's illustration of lacunae from docks from a previous century is also helpful. Yeah, so that's one of the indicators that you think breadcrumbs us to David R. Jones as the man behind Kevin Klein.
Well, maybe maybe in Austin, somebody will out Klein, and it will actually be this dude named Kevin Klein, and that would be very cool. Maybe
wouldn't it be amazing if some guy walks up to us like, "Hey, I'm Kevin Klein." And it's like, yeah, but you're the actor.
Yeah, or we could say, yeah, but really, but you're 30. How did you do all of that in your lifetime?
So silly.
Anyway.
Oh God, we're just being silly now. It's time for silliness. We've been
Okay.
podcasting
I
a
got a
while. We can
question
get
for
in.
you. Or to
Yeah.
anyone, maybe there'll be someone who comes to the conference who's from Aurum Solus background. One of the times that we did a public Enochian demonstration, and someone who was there we wanted to have someone do the banishing in ancient Greek because it sounds really cool. And this person did it really well with real energy behind it. And so the question came up, and I could argue this one either way. Did that clash with the energy of the Enochian? It seems I'm using this as a metaphor, not a mathematical description, but it seems like Hebrew and Enochian sort of one nests within the other. But would the same be true if you're using ancient Greek? Because you can, just in terms of Golden Dawn style magic, you can do, and the Aurum Solus does, switch all of that into ancient Greek. You can even switch a middle pillar into ancient Greek. You're having to just take only a couple leaps to do that. So, and my impression of the banishing, when I have heard this particular person do basically a banishing pentagram in ancient Greek, was like, wow, I want to know how to do that. That was better than the one I can do, and I can do one really well, but in Hebrew. And so that's something I personally want to explore. But anyone who has thoughts on that or wants to do a full-blown ancient Greek ritual in my Enochian temple, write me, come visit me. I want to explore this.
Well, I think the most work done converting GD rituals to Greek has been done by Nick Farrell and his wife, right? And I think they've done the most work on that. And I'm not sure I have most of his. No, I don't. He's written so much. I have a lot of his books, and but I haven't been through every single one of them. So if they're in that, someone let me know where they are. Or Nick, let us know if that's something that's still yet to come. And shout out to Nick's new Substack blog that you can subscribe to for some really great articles. Again, he is one of the few GD chief adepts who's out there pushing the envelope, exploring, and unabashedly taking the system into new and interesting realms. And that's really great. As a traditionalist, I love the tradition, but I'm by no means a dogmatist, and I love these explorations into new realms. My own explorations mostly go into the Celtic and Irish pantheon, but it's great to see so much innovation happening, and that's why I'm excited again by what you and your husband have done with Enochian. It seems and the just the fact that the Monas Hieroglyphica ties so much into it is something, again, most of us had come to expect that wasn't the case due to a long history of poorly understanding it, due to largely a lack of good translations, which you fixed that problem for us.
Well,
we can go
there was a
wild.
lot of luck involved in that. I mean, if you figure you're not going to see the connections between Enochian and the Monas Hieroglyphica unless you know both really well. And there were some assumptions that I made about D that I didn't realize until after I'd made them, and they turned out to be true, that the Academy at that time, because I'm a retired English professor. I'm not a retired professor of Hermeticism from Amsterdam, or that program didn't even exist when I started my academic career. So I just assumed that he knew Kabbalah and that he used the same basic structure I used. And I was seeing all these connections, and then I found out, oh, well, no, D's not supposed to know. D doesn't know Kabbalah. It's like, thank goodness Robertson Watson pointed out that, yes, he was collecting Hebrew grammars. He wrote a table of Kabbalistic correspondences and so on. So thank you very much for your kind words, but also, like, I just had some kind of luck on my side, and and I happened to be going through a Golden Dawn initiations at the same time. And I was like, oh, this stuff in the monad, this kind of looks like what we're studying in the outer order. Oh, look at this. These planetary things, like what's this stuff in Philosophus? This is really kind of wild. What? And the main thing that I thought was very different when I started to understand how you have this system of kind of ceremonial alchemy, or what we would call like grade work in the monad, was that you're not going off to the sides of the tree like you tend to do in Practicus and Philosophus. Well, but I was using the Stella Matutina, I was using Regardi, because that's what the order that I was in was, used back then. Now, if you just look at it as attunements and you're going right up the tree, it matches perfectly. And that's how the original order looked at it. So that's been a fascinating journey. Hey, I wanted to say something else about your shout out to Nick Farrell. I don't know Nick's work that well, but I did love his article on Enochian and the way he took Paul Foster Case to task for just lying about Enochian, and spot on, Nick. Appreciated your article and have recommended it to many people.
Likewise, Nick, I appreciate that you do what you do, and so many people avoid those sort of sticky areas that seem not wanting to call out historical people for those sort of things. But I think it's important to raise awareness of those issues when they're present. Nick wrote me a nice long post message about Enochian and stuff. He definitely said he said a bunch of things, but he mentioned that it's since the time he was deep in it, things have progressed a lot through the work of Aaron Leach and you and other people, right? So hopefully our efforts here will continue to maybe incite him to get into something. The Enochian system is big, and it doesn't, we are interested in the minutia, especially the little things that no one else has really looked at. So you don't actually have to get back into everything to do something interesting. And so, Nick, I hope you take up the challenge to do something in that field. And I'm sure he will. We're in touch, and we'll be in Europe in 2027 in Prague for EnochiaCon. So that'll be a great opportunity for all those European-based people to come and present and hang out.
That would be great. I have done the calls in Kelly's in the tower at the Donkey in the Cradle, and I'm going to regale you all with stories, but I won't do that here. I do hope that we go to the Donkey in the Cradle and we can find some way that they will let us up into the tower to do Enochian. That would be a super blast. And there are also, Prague is a meteoric crater, so it's the Earth energy there is just great.
Yeah, I noticed a vibe the first time I ever went there. And the first time I went there wasn't for magical reasons. I was just playing some shows there. And so I flew there from Ireland to play some shows and then flew back. But that was the first time I went to the Alchemist Museum and all of that stuff. And I knew I had to go back one day. And 10 years later, 12 years later, I made it back and had my magical experiences there and I launched the Arcane Research Society and did a series of talks for 2 days. And got to know in 2019. And then I did a presentation for Dr. Angela Voss's graduate and PhD students at University of Canterbury. And because, to see if to see if it had legs and if they liked the idea to get academics on board with presenting papers and research aimed at practitioners rather than just peer review, because that, is of limited interest to most practitioners when academics are simply just making their arguments essentially for a selection committee to get approved for publication. It's a different process. As soon as you tell academics your audience is people actually living this as a spirituality, it opens up all these options, including changes the focus of research entirely, or at least of presentation. And they loved it. They got behind me, and I went to work for this church in California. They agreed to host my first conference, HERMETICon. We went down to PantheaCon. I did a big presentation for an hour and a half in a huge hall. It was packed. Mary Kay Greer was there. There's photos of me hanging out with Chick, Tabby, and Lon, and we got them all on board, lined up as presenters. It was all a go, and COVID shut it all. And so, it reemerged 4 or 5 years later, as I knew we would. I told everyone it's going to be 5 years before this whole thing is over. People called me crazy, but I was right. It was
You're
5
right.
years up here in Canada at least, before things got functional again. And so yeah, someone asked, Michael Lynch asks, here's thanks everyone for keep the questions coming, folks. We're happy to stick around as long as you have questions. Does anyone on here have the Dennings Phillips volume 3 where this resides? I think you can get that pretty easily online, can't you? I think there's ebooks of it or something like that. Moldavite. I don't know what Moldavite refers to.
A Moldavite is the meteoric stone that you find all over the Czech Republic that parts of it made the crater in Prague. In fact, I've got Moldavite up in my temple room. Now, Michael, I thought that you used Denning and Phillips in your humor section. That wasn't very nice of you to say that, but then you didn't. I did, and I haven't read it. So you can respond or not.
Yeah, there's an interesting controversy that I think Farrell also noted about the Dennings and Phillips.
You know what it was?
Maybe it was someone else.
Denning and Phillips. I just threw shade at the wrong. That wasn't what Michael would joke about with that. So apologies to Denning and Phillips, and never mind. Terry's gonna stop interrupting for 2 seconds.
Well, I got a criticism of them because apparently they really pushed their Enochian system as superior to the Golden Dawns and based on information the Golden Dawn didn't have access to. And since then, Golden Dawn people have easily debunked the fact that the stuff that the Denning and Phillips Aurum Solis system used that the GD allegedly didn't know existed was simply the true and faithful relation. And the idea that Mathers and Westcott didn't know the true and faithful relation existed and had never read it is insane nonsense and not true. So, they basically took the Golden Dawn Enochian system, added some things in it from the true and faithful relation and claimed supremacy, and then lied about it. So I have very little respect for what Aurum Solis did with Enochian because of their attitude and because of their false claims. Maybe some of the stuff they did was really good, and that's fine. They did some interesting things for sure. But yeah, I don't have, when people I like their
Greek.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's interesting.
Them confused with the Schulers, but anyway.
Yeah. Oh, don't confuse Denning and Phillips with the Schulers.
That's why I apologize.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So it's too bad that there was this hostility from Aurum Solis toward the GD tradition, because every time the GD seems they put something. It seems that every time the GD showed a technique or a method, they just tweaked it a bit and said, "See, ours is more original and better." And this is something that just bothers me in general with people when they change someone else's work and claim that theirs is the original and better. It's lazy, it's sloppy, and it's dishonest. But that's not to take away from the good things that what?
No, I'm not arguing with you a bit. I don't know their work as well as you seem to. What I just know that one issue. Yeah. No, what I did like, and it's not unique to them, is like one of the things, since Alan and I both came at this from a neo-pagan approach. And in fact, back in 87, the temple that he was part of in Albuquerque they were the first group of kind of Wiccans who were allowed to come in, because they were told, no, you've got to be Christian. In fact, you've got to be Catholic. So that changed, around 87. So a real issue among people who are not Christian or not Jewish or, is all this Hebrew. Now, it's not an issue with me anymore. Okay. I'm an old lady now, but it was an issue to me then. I'm like, if I wanted to learn all this Hebrew, really, I would, it's kind of, but I didn't like Latin once either. And now I translate Latin and love it. So what I liked with Aurum Solis was, if we're using ancient Greek, ain't nobody going to say we're doing Christian liturgy. All right. Now I may not care as much about it as I did when I was younger and more of a, I don't know. My passions were raging hotter back then. But you really do, if you're a neo-pagan, you can really get into ancient Greek a lot easier than Hebrew. And we also had friends back in those days who, since Bompo is part of Tibetan Buddhism, who were looking at comparisons between that tradition and and then using Sanskrit or Pali with Enochian. It's just, I mean, most of those folks have gone off and become senior citizens or taken respectable employment somewhere. So we can't pull them to Enochiacon. God, I bet, I wish we could. Wouldn't it be cool to have somebody do, like, we open up the Earth Temple and do a Bonpo ritual there?
Sounds like fun to me. Yeah.
It sounds like a great time to me. But I don't know anyone who can do that. Maybe you can find someone up there.
No. Well, we've put out the word now. We'll see what comes back to us. Yeah. Prague will be fun. Austin's going to be fun. We're doing it in the States so that all these Americans can more easily get to it. Plus, one thing that happened after, it's the easiest way to lower the cost by doing it November 6th through 8th in 2026 in Austin, because hotels are cheaper, flights are cheaper. And one thing that just happened after we did our conference here this past summer is the Vancouver business, whatever it's called, sent out a message informing business people. So I got the message that the hotel costs, which were already exorbitant here in Vancouver last summer, as everyone noticed, would be going up for next summer by 60%.
No, I'm sorry.
So, like, the idea, they're killing our city. They're killing our country. It's tragic what's happening in Canada right now. And, and that includes the ostriches. If you don't know about the ostriches, Google Canadian ostriches, and it's serious. It's one of the biggest. These ostriches miraculously survived bird flu, and they should be studied by the scientists. Instead, the RCMP went in with the government and killed them all the other day.
Yeah, I read.
Because obviously we have no interest in studying how animals might develop resistance to a deadly disease. We wouldn't want to study that now, would we? That seems silly. Why would we want to study how so crazy? It's just heartbreaking, man.
Throw out something about Austin, because I don't.
Do.
Yeah. So for those of you who may be thinking about coming to Austin, if you want to stick a day earlier or later on there, you have that incredible library there too, the Harry Ransom Library. It's got Crowley manuscripts, it's got some Golden Dawn manuscripts. I mean, it's got a lot of other cool alchemical manuscripts too. I plan to just spend at least a day and maybe a couple going through some manuscripts. In fact, I've been developing a list of manuscripts there I want to look at. Although
I'll be going early and staying late, so we can do that together.
Well, yeah, we ought to. Well, let's.
Yeah, we will.
And have both an after party and then the after trips to the library.
Well, because we're doing it there, I have to go down at least days, if not a week early, to arrange rentals of all the sound and audio visual gear and all of that, and sound. I have to, it's going to be a much bigger setup, but it'll also have more people because now it's a real thing. And I'm very excited to meet the requests of everyone to bring down the cost. And we do that most easily by doing it in a place that isn't the most expensive city in the world, which Vancouver now officially is. So yeah, we're doing it in a cool city. It's a cool city. It's a liberal, fun city in Texas. I've never been, but I look forward to it. You can go there, do Enochian, listen to lectures, and buy a cowboy hat. What's not to love?
Austin is one of the only places you'll go where you can go to a cowboy bar and see liberal things out in front. There's one bar down there that regularly posts memes that are hilarious. I have relatives down there, so I'm going to go early too and visit my relatives. But we didn't conspire on this, actually. So we didn't conspire on this. I'm telling our audience, because he's the one running all of this. I'm just a person who talks a lot, like I keep saying. Anyway,
thank God you do, because I don't.
I'm figuring I've sort of run out of things to say, so I'll cede the floor to you.
That's my favorite part of the podcast is when here, I was thinking about this the other day, actually, about, because this podcast generally is 2 to 3 hours. What?
Oh, I don't know what happened there. No.
I don't know, just a glitch. The spirits of the web. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like the first, when I do like the long form podcast. The 3 hour podcasts, I guess, are much more than Long form, apparently, according to the young people, now refers to anything over 20 minutes, which, that scares me. If 20 minutes is your idea of a long attention span. But in the first hour of a 3-hour podcast, I realized I was thinking this over the history of this is number 115 I've done. And the average time is definitely 3 hours. The first hour, we generally talk about things that we know people want to hear. In the second hour, usually we talk about things that the guest wants to talk about. And in the third hour, that's usually when you've done those other two things. So that's when like sort of God steps in and you just talk about the things God wants to talk about. Or another way of saying that is, random chaos, creative exuberance, ecstatically emerging from the pre-semiotic nature of our beings. Exactly. See, the chanting will continue until morale improves.
Yeah. Oh God. But that's of course the name that I just said. So.
Lex Animata says Jack Talcott could do it. I don't know what he's referring to, but he said that. Yeah, you can clarify if you want. I think it's important. I just got a message while we were on from P.D. Newman, asking if did I hear that Nora Michalska passed? Yes, I did. I got the email from her dad last night, along with many other people. Nora was a guest on this podcast twice. Both of her episodes, and including even the clips, are all within the top 10 downloads of this podcast, the most popular podcast episodes of the podcast. She was very kind to come and talk to me about the left-hand path, the black magic, Satanism. She's the ex-girlfriend of E.A. Quetting, who, of course, I think is doing time right now for his involvement in really dark stuff like 764 and 09A or some connection to that. Again, I'm not the expert on that, so don't quote me, but I do. You can watch our interviews if you want to know. And it's very sad, but Anima Noir has passed, it seems. And so yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that. Yeah,
she was
from Prague, and she wanted to come on a third time and talk about her learning magic from Vincent Bridges back in the day. That's what she wanted to talk about on a third podcast.
I had no idea. And after he died, she had some encounter with him in a bar in New York that she was telling me about this in 2018. Alchemy of Prague. She came to the release of Vincent's book on Edward Kelly, and had this. So I'm just shocked by this. I know she'd made her own tarot deck. That's really sad news.
I was looking forward to her coming back on for a third time to talk about her memories of working in Prague with and learning. He was one of her teachers when she was young in magic in Prague, because he lived there and she's from there. And her the email from her parents, of course, from her father, says, she changed her name. She died in a state of mortal sin.
No, she had. She was. Anything else I say about that, I should not say on a podcast.
I don't have much news. I need to die. The reason I didn't bring it up earlier, and I'm bringing it up now that P.D. Newman has just messaged me and other people are messaging me, I figure it's a good time, since because of the connection with Vincent Bridges. I figured it's appropriate to remember her now.
Well, and she was
her now because she was a human being, and I don't
know if she knows.
I don't personally believe in the truth of the Catholic doctrine of mortal sin. I don't believe, like many Catholic priests, I don't believe that. Well, let's as a famous Jesuit once prayed, Lord, I pray that there is no hell. Lord, I pray that if there is a hell, that no one will ever go there. Lord, I pray that no one is in hell. And I'm paraphrasing it. And I thought that was a beautiful prayer to come from a Jesuit, because it's not, it's not getting contentious theologically, really. It's just praying that all souls, when they pass on, find peace and beauty and truth. And I don't like Yeah, it's not a surprise to me that if you raise your kids with this idea that, if they don't confess to a man in a dark robe in a dark room, your mortal sins, that you're damned to damnation and suffering for eternally. I think it's a abhorrent belief. Personally, that's what I think, and I'm sad that her parents had such strict dogmatic views, which I don't think have their origin in the teachings of Jesus whatsoever. So that's my thoughts on that, and I will definitely keep Nora and her soul in my prayers, and I hope you do too.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm shocked. I always thought I'd get to talk to her one more time.
Yeah, I'm gonna cry now if we don't move on. So I just leave it at that. Ice hand. It is very sad
Yeah, I agree with you.
for that man that he would have said that of his child. Yeah, I almost wrote a response to share my memories of her with him, but I realized I wasn't ready to do that. So God bless her soul and the soul of all who have passed, because we're still we're still near All Souls Day and All Saints Day and this sacred month. Samhain in Ireland. If you get by an Irish calendar, November doesn't say November; it says Samhain.
Yeah.
Right. No, Halloween is the All Hallows Eve, the eve of the holy day, and in Irish it's Ia Samhain, the eve of Samhain, because it's the eve of the month of Samhain. So yeah. Lex Animata clarified his Jack Talcott comment. He says, "Oh, in Austin, Texas, I meant at Jack Talcott could attend and maybe do presentations. Many are saying that Terry Burns and Jack Talcott would hit it off with their divine chemistry. Sounds like fun.
I would love to find out. Let's hope that he comes here. Well, just randomly, since I'm trying to shake off the shock with Anna Monora, I'm going to say, well, so she's hanging out with Vincent now, and I could tell you an Alan story, because after I was very shocked when Alan died, and if you know this structure of the tree well, it's not difficult to, when you're encountering someone in the time after they died and see where they are, you can look at it as filtered through your consciousness, but also you can see, well, it's the Yesodic structure of the afterlife. So there was Alan kind of hanging out in a place sort of like this, a lot of books. And there was Vincent, and he was... then the person that was helping me scry this said, "Oh my gosh, I have never seen anything like this before." And I'm like, "What?" Because I'm not a scryer. All I could feel was like this purple light, which like you'd associate with Yesod. I know all that. And it was like, God, there's Vincent there. And he's like, he's sitting in a geode. I've never seen this. It's like, so here's Alan in a kind of astral cabin in the woods next to Vincent in a giant geode. So now maybe Anna Manoir is hanging out with him, except neither of them really did left-hand path stuff. And that was kind of her thing. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, she famously came on the podcast to have a contentious debate with me about these things. She wanted to come on, and I said, I usually don't talk about the stuff that you're into, but I've always wanted to talk to someone if they're into what you're into and willing for an actual debate on it, like, so I can actually ask the questions that someone else, if we were just doing a puff piece interview, would find offensive. I want to be able to ask these offensive questions, not because I'm trying to offend you, but just because I want to understand. It's faith seeking understanding, as some Protestant once said. And she did. She was amazing. We had such dynamic conversations, and it was really great to have that from someone who worships demons and devils, whatever those may be. I mean, as a hermetic person, spiritually, I do see all spirits as kind of similar. Some may be more unclean than others, but all things other than God, the Father, or the Lord, the monad, are unclean or are a little bit dirty, as the Hermetica texts themselves say. Even the cosmos is a bit dirty or unclean in the Hermetica, right? Only the monad is completely pure. So, for someone who's dirty to, don't point out the dirt on your neighbor's shoe when your face is covered in mud.
I am thinking of alchemy and the Shannon Grimes's argument, which I totally embrace, as you know, in my analysis of the monad, of Zosimus of Panopolis and becoming gold. And I'm wondering if you're thinking that maybe you could get Shannon Grimes to come next year. I know P.D. Newman and Shannon Grimes and some others. I think Ike Baker were over in New Hermopolis presenting in that great conference a year ago that I so wish I could have gone to.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah. I do want to get there. Shannon Grimes would be awesome. I should talk to Ike, get him to maybe plant the seed in her mind and see if we can get her there. Do you know where she lives?
I don't know. For some reason, I'm thinking that maybe
she's American. I think she's American.
She's American. I think she's in North Carolina too, but I don't know why I think that.
Wow. The great thing about doing it in Austin, and again, I'm very proud to have done the last 2 years in Canada. We will return to Canada. We're going to keep doing events in Canada, as our upcoming December 6th workshop will demonstrate. It's going to be so much fun, and I'm so excited to show the members that, like, you know, a lot of people say the event was expensive. Well, it's not just an event. It's a year worth of stuff. It's a whole, you know, we've got the Dr. Chato's course, which starts at the end of the month, and a whole bunch of other things. So we're going to keep giving our membership as much as we can every single year, more and more and more, so that we really just create a society that's full of abundant realms of study and sub-realms of study, and a mix of practitioners and academics. It's so much more fun to have a group of people who don't all believe the same thing. It's just more fun, as our event proved this year. Like, you know, the mixture of people all in one room was wild. It was wild.
No, well, it was great. It was really, it's so Alan and I met years ago at a neo-pagan intentional community. And so when I became part of a large magical order, I was like, oh, that's like people are going to have different points of view. All right. That doesn't exist very well in a hierarchical order. I understand that. But there is something really wonderful about being very into what you're into, and not, I mean, like, it doesn't bother me that I don't do Enochian exactly the way Frater RC does, and vice versa, you know. And remember that great time we had after EnochiaCon? We 3 different perspectives with I was staying at Jeremiah Shee's, and he did his pentagram ritual the way he did it, which he
did a Star Ruby.
Yeah, he did that. Yeah, well, I was saying
Star
that
Ruby,
for that.
or was it the other one, the Star Sapphire? I don't know. I'm not.
It's the equivalent of the pentagram ritual, but it's really a adept level thing that you do in his tradition, I think. But since I'm not,
you did the one. I'm not sure if it was the Star Ruby or Star Sapphire. Someone in the chat let us know. It was the one with the Apo Panto Kakodaimonos. It was that one where you moved, and it was done a ritual that's done counterclockwise.
I think it's the Star Ruby. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it might be the Ruby. Neither of us are of that tradition, so we actually just don't know. So if anyone knows which of those, so it moved counterclockwise, and it had the Apo Pantos. So he did that, and just had to correct you because it wasn't a version of the LBRB. It was the
Well, it wasn't a version of it, but it was. Has he explained why
Star
it was
Ruby
equivalent, except that
Ruby.
It would be at yeah. So that's thanks, Paul. Exactly.
Yeah. So he did the Star Ruby. So. Then you did the pentagram ritual, and I did the hexagram ritual.
Well, the Star Ruby, as Paul is saying, is a pentagram ritual, but it wasn't the pentagram ritual the way that we do a pentagram ritual. And the way you do it is different than the way I do it, because the one I did was the way that Bridges modified the Golden Dawn style one to match the pentagrammatic structure of Enochian. And it's not a big, and added a 5th archangel. But anyway, that's now, of course, what kind of an astral jumble will we do if we start doing all of our different approaches to Enochian? Well, we'll find out, and we'll banish afterwards.
Absolutely. Well, what was interesting to me is, and anytime you have whether it's within a tradition or across different traditions, anytime you have a group of experienced practitioners, veterans, adepts, whatever you want to call people who aren't beginners. um it there's the differences add so much power, because each person is doing things differently, but they're all bringing through the best magic, the best energy that they can. Each person is connecting with the divine, connecting through their nous with the universal powers, and bringing through as much of that divine force into form as they can. And so when you had the three of us do each three basic opening rituals, the ways we do it, vibrating as we do it, the currents that just came through and built upon each other created the most spectacular field of forces in the room that we were in. And we took a little selfie afterwards that I posted on my Instagram, and everyone's like, oh, what did you guys get up to with that altar there? It's like not much, but that's how you start. Sometimes you start simple, and you get to know each other, baby steps in working with new magicians. And of course then we did another different kind of operation after, and that was interesting. And we can't say much about that, but yes, Paul Ferguson of course has to say FAFO, which stands for you, for any if there's any of the silent generation kicking around watching the stream, that means fuck around and find out. Yes, well, doing basic banishing and invoking rituals with depths of different tradition, I don't think it really counts as fucking around, but that's why we only did that, because we'll get there. We'll get to the point where we're willing to maybe push the envelope a little bit in certain areas. But generally, most experienced magicians, one of the things about being an experienced practitioner, in my experience, is just knowing how to do things safely. Like a lot of my work involves doing things safely so that I don't mess myself up for a day, a week, or a month, or put my head in a weird space, because that's all it can take sometimes, is a subtle trigger of energy, and all of a sudden you're not thinking right.
Well, one thing you did that
danger occurs.
I really respected a lot was in the other things that we did was there were reasons why you said, because of your headspace, you didn't want to do certain things. I think that's like a really wise thing. And you have to, you got to know when like, I'm not in the headspace to do that now. It's like, no, we are not going to scry the ethers today. Bad things might happen.
Yeah, we could have done anything we wanted. But that's why self-knowledge is so important. And also being in touch with your own spiritual being in knowing what your sense of alignment is right then and there. I've done some amazing things, but usually they occur when I'm feeling a certain alignment that will allow them to occur. And if I don't feel that, then maybe I'm going to be a bit more chill and preliminary in my work, and just set the stage a bit, and not just necessarily go straight to diving off a cliff.
Yeah. Well, hey, so you're a musician. Do you ever just take your instruments and go jam out in your Enochian temple?
Oh gosh, no. But it's been years since I've been able to have a dedicated room for an Enochian temple.
Fair enough.
So because COVID changed things, and I've been where I've been since then. So we'll get there again. But I'll come visit you and play my uilleann pipes in your temple if you want.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning Vincent Bridges, and so he did a kind of magical therapy with people, which I'm not sure if is like, because you pay by donation, because it's not sort of sanctioned by the American Psychological Association. No, but one of the things he'd have his Enochian temple cranked up and running. And his temple was very esoteric. His, like ours, would have some Tibetan tankas, and we have like crystals all over the place. But he moved a stereo system in there at one point, and I was like, "Oh, this is wrong. Now, come on, this is your temple space. Like, what are you doing here?" And he had this whole set of incredible guards all around. He had property wards all around. But so what he would do with a client was have him go on and just put in some song that they really liked and just dance around in the temple space. And I've never done that in my own temple. I don't know that I think it's a good idea, but it's like I'd like to try it again in his temple space and see, like, I don't know. I think the idea was because of the kind of ideas that he had back from his angels in the DNA article and so on was, well, this is going to make whatever it is come up. That's one of the things that he attributed, and so did I, and so did Alan, actually, the sort of spurious effects some people say they get when they're doing Enochian. Sometimes their temple's set up wrong. Sometimes it's just you're dealing with your shit, right? And it's like, okay, you did this. This energy is flowing. You run energy too strong through a wire and you melt it. So this is something that he would do, and I probably wouldn't say this if he were still alive, because people would make judgments, because people can be judgy and all of that. But it worked pretty darn well, really. And from that derives my current practice of, like, I leave the temple running, and when I need insights into something, or I just sort of want to smooth out my aura, like, I just go up and set things up and run, and all I really do to close it down is close the veil. One of the rules we had here was we banished in the house, and but we didn't banish in the Enochian temple. We just left it run all the time, which I know is something some people will tell you, absolutely don't do that. I don't know. I think you'd be fine to do it in here.
Yeah. It's been, well, I think this topic has only been beaten to death in the GD world, and maybe it hasn't flooded out into the mainstream culture yet. But in the GD world, it's broadly considered that people have been over banishing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I don't know since when. I know Farrell's got some articles on it, but everyone's talked about it. And it's due to different little mispresentations of information over the decades.
Well, then it's due to grade work, like go banish every day. And in this one group I was in, which I left, but it was like, okay, it's like you need to eat more Wheaties, so banish twice a day. It's like, no, excuse me, I'm not going to. There is another thing about having people together with many different views, which is at a certain point, you can just be like, well, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. But I mean, you do have to give enough of, keep an open mind long enough that you understand why people are doing what you're doing before you.
Well, and like Michael Lynch said earlier on in the comments, like, does it work? I've tried magic so many, like, the first time when I sat down in Burnaby, shout out to the suburb of Burnaby, home of Michael Bublé and what's his name, Michael J. Fox, great Vancouver Canadians. I got to work with Lon Milo Duquette, thanks to my friend Troy. Shout out Troy. And we worked with the cardboard ring, the gold ring of cardboard, the gold that he has this beautiful little setup. And some people really are hard on him for making it so easy and giving people such a shortcut. But it's always been my belief, if you can't get things to work bare bones, then you're probably not going to get them to work whole hog with all the accoutrements and bells and whistles, just like and many things in life are like that, right? If you can't just sort of, so like trying things out is fun, because there's this you enter back into that mind of the child state of wonder, saying, I don't know what's going to happen, I haven't done this before. And that's powerful in and of itself. I have a friend, a Golden Dawn Adept friend, who says that that's the most important thing, is having that, unless you have the mind of a child, you can't enter the kingdom of God. Like I take that to heart these days a lot, thinking, I want to approach all my magic with this sense of innocence and wonder, because obviously embedded in the ritual are all these invocations and statements of power, authority, humility. I'm less than sand, oh God, I am nothing, and bow down before me, all ye archangels, right? Like you go back and forth between these things, but that innocence mind of that dress up, we're playing dress up. It's part of that child, like kids playing dress up. God sees that, I think, and is very favorable to that that kind of humility and playfulness and innocence. And so, you know, trying things in different ways, I think people, it's great. Yeah, a lot of people, because I have spent time doing the traditionalist thing, a lot of people seem to think you can only do one thing. No, you can do that. You can be a traditionalist, and you can also, you know, be a wild and crazy guy.
Yeah. Well, you know, the older I get, the more I'm very lucky at this particular time in my life, because I do work, but I can do the work when I want to do it. And, you know, I realize I just forgotten how much I like to do all kinds of things, which makes you think, well, what are all the other things out there? I mean, we're not amorphous vessels of, you know, of spiritual experience, but I think as you get closer to the end of your life, it starts to open up again, if you let it. You know, all of a sudden, like there were many years where I couldn't scry at all. And I've never been a very good scryer, but now it's like, oh, all right, let's just see where the spirit leads me. It's leading me there. All right, what are we going to do here? This is what we're going to do. Okay. And the other thing is, since we leave the temple running, or I guess now I leave the temple. See, I feel Alan around all the time. And at a certain point, before I retired, I wouldn't say that. It'd be like, well, Terry, you're being a weirdo again. Tune it down. It's like, no, he's hanging around all the time. Let's make inappropriate comments here. Okay. You know, Crowley liked these comments, heavenly bridegrooms. I find, you know, having a late husband who's off on the astral is kind of fun, but we don't even need to go there any further. So all of these things that magically I tried really hard to do the way you're supposed to do it, it's like now I can just do it and it's fun. It's great.
I want to say one of my teachers and mentors here in Vancouver during seminary wrote an entire book. I believe it's called Love Beyond Death, but it's a book about her after death relationship with her best friend, mentor, and lover, who was I think he was a Carmelite monk. So they were friends. She's her name was Cynthia Bourgeot. She did her PhD in musicology before becoming an Episcopal priest, and then she spearheaded the centering prayer movement. So she was one of my professors one summer. Really amazing, massive intellect. Often musicologists actually have pretty potent minds, I find. And so she wrote a whole beautiful book that's just shocking about her friendship with her best friend, this monk, who they had obviously no physical relationship. And then after he died, they became spiritual lovers. It's a spiritual thing, not a sexual thing.
Well, it's like the whole Bride of Christ thing within,
Yeah, I mean, you could call it psychosexual, I suppose. But it's a fascinating read. So check out Cynthia Bourgeot for anyone interested in that. But here to Paul Ferguson's comment, Lon says, yes, Lon says if you can't make a paper ring magical, then you can't do magic with a gold ring. I mean, so not only so I literally went into that operation with Lon and a bunch of other people. We're doing an aether, we're doing techs, of course. And so I went in with a very observable goal. It was the first time ever I went and did magic. I did money magic. So I was like, okay, you know, I've never done magic in an auditorium before with a bunch of strangers and paper rings. Let's do something that I'll know if it worked or not. So I did money magic, and boy, did it work. Shocking. And so, yeah, if you can't do it with a paper ring, you can't do it with a gold one. I love that. Love you, Lon. Lon has said he'll present at next year's Enochian.
Really?
But only remotely due to, I think, health or travel. I don't really want to speak for him, of course. But thank you for agreeing to do a remote presentation, Lon. And if there's any way we can get him to come in person and do some music with us live on stage, that would also be great. But we'll see. It's still we have a year 306 a year minus 3 days to make it all happen.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a bunch of comments here. Shall we dive into more of them? Anything can be magical.
We could dive into a couple, maybe.
Yeah, anything can be magical as you want it to be. Belief makes blessed. Sounds good. That sounds good. Paul, I don't know if you wanted this on screen, but I still struggle with scrying. Yeah, well, let's talk.
I'd like to talk to anyone who, you know, there's I hope someone will present on scrying next year.
Oh, I've got a featured presenter focused on that.
Oh, great.
I've got confirmed from with we have a Frater Ashen Chassan.
Oh, wonderful.
I'll be bringing him there to teach us about Trithemian method. He's an expert on the Trithemian method, the DSIC, drawing spirits in the crystal, which obviously
Which is
influenced
one
Dee
of the
greatly.
D's, because if he wrote back from the continent to Lord Burleigh, saying, I need more time to copy this Trithemian book.
Yeah, so Ashen Chassan will hopefully we'll see. It seems to it's confirmed. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of people there. It's going to be a big one, and it's going to be a great one for the ages, to be sure. Definitely don't miss out. Early bird tickets go on sale like in a few days. Yeah, so stay tuned, people. Subscribe to arcaneresearchsociety.com so that you get notified first. So yeah, we'll have scrying, and we have a workshop room for workshops in person that won't be recorded and that are just going to be like, you know, a dozen to 20 people, smaller group thing happening. So we'll have that this year. Last year we only had lectures. Next year we have workshops. We have a dining hall. I'm going to set up a whole sandwich bar, so for lunches everyone can, you know, gather in the hall and make sandwiches and hang out if they want. Of course, Austin has great food, so people will want to go out largely. But yeah, we have the whole building to ourselves, and I'm very pleased about that. It's just the next step up the mountain.
Awesome.
That's all the comments we have, I think. The most difficult thing about the GD, Crushing Nihilism says, the most difficult thing about the GD, at least the heathen version, is the pace. The first 9 months to a year is LBRP and MP along with meditation. It forces you to slow down. Yeah, so in the GD, that no one in the GD would ever say you should spend that much time banishing every day. And the middle pillar is a ritual that doesn't exist until Philosophists, at least. It's not traditionally done by the outer order members, and it certainly doesn't exist as a ritual in the way that we usually do it today. The meditations also don't exist in the original Golden Dawn. They were added by the Stella Matutina, but me and of course anyone I've ever worked with has sworn by them because they are absolutely incredible. But yeah, no, the LIRP is what Golden Dawn members would do, and they would do it as needed. You do the LBRP when you need to banish, when you're feeling unbalanced, and you do the LIRP to invoke when necessary.
No, there are some orders that have you do it every day. That was
it says in the original manuscript that you can do it practice it as a devotional, doing LIRP in the morning and LBRP in the evening.
No,
so that to me, that's where you should start. I think you should start with LIRP in the morning and LBRP in the evening. But you know, once you get to Adeptus grades, you've got all these rituals. You don't need to be doing. You don't need to be, you know, doing all of them all the time. Though a lot of us consider just a daily LIRP to be our main thing. A lot of people, like, if you do nothing else, at least do an LIRP every day. But sometimes that might be a meditation. Sometimes that might be a middle pillar. Sometimes it might be something else. It really, in my opinion, depends on where you're at in your alchemy, where you're at in life, and what kind of other operations you're working on. What is the great work you're doing at that time? If the great work you're doing is building your elemental tools, that's different than building your Enochian tools. If maybe you're learning Solomonic magic in 5-6 or doing the Abramelin in 6-5, who knows what you're doing, right? It's so personal and so dependent on where you're at. For students beginning and learning, it's a different situation. But yeah, as you call it, the Heathen Golden Dawn sounds appropriately named.
Well, which raises a question too, like, just for strictly doing Enochian, depending on what you define doing Enochian as, what do you need to know? And that was something Alan and I worked out a lot with our Enochian class, which is, you know, for one thing, you can do the same thing with the Monas Hieroglyphica, right? That's why I think it was a foundation for Enochian. But what are the things the Monas Hieroglyphica assumes you know? Well, the Hebrew alphabet and basic astrology, Platonic solids. What are we going to shift over and study in the knowledge lectures? Oh, this. And I mean, all right, the top was our reach. But I mean, there are... your seal of Alma works
I just did
better
a whole
if you
2-hour
actually
Tatwa.
know. Yeah, go ahead.
I just taught a 2-hour Tatwa class yesterday, ironically.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Tatwas.
Yeah.
So I just had to interrupt you. Sorry about that.
I know, that's fine. I love studying the Tatwas, but you know, so to shift with Enochian, like the seal of Amet is going to work way better if you understand the names of these archangels on there, among other things, but then you have others like Medimi, which is a topic for another full time probably.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, we definitely need to do another podcast and not wait 2 years for the next one. But we can talk about some of that stuff at the workshop as well. Medimi or these things. I was thinking about the expert. I'd like to get. Do you know? Is it Colin D. Campbell?
Yeah, I don't know
on
him.
Who wrote the book on the Sigillum Diamet? Yeah. He seems like a interesting guy.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the book.
If anyone knows him, maybe tell him to give me a shout, because it would be cool to see if he'd be interested. There's just so many presenters we want to have, and that's why, one of the funny things, the first year in 2024 when we did this, I got some messages from people saying, how on earth do you think you could ever do more than one Enochian conference? Everything that ever could be said about it will be said in one conference. And I was like, yeah, I guess if all you're familiar with is the Wikipedia page.
So this is a sign of people who don't know what they're talking about and don't want to. So, for example, like I was the director of Women and Gender Studies here briefly, and people like to talk about in the 70s at the beginning of the program when people wanted a class in the English program. Now, of course, there are many on women in literature, and people did ask in the department, like, well, do you think you could get a whole class out of that? It's like, no, probably not. Never mind. Forget about it. So yeah, I think those kind of questions are a real indication of sort of,
why we need to do this.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, once people see the poster that will go out this week for next one, and they'll see it's the 3rd annual one, they might start to realize, maybe there's more to this than we thought. And that would be a good thing.
That I thought last year there was nothing that could be done about it, but every single person I wanted to hear more from. But that's how things go.
If only we could do it, make it a month-long event at some villa in Europe.
We win the lottery.
If we win, I should start playing the lottery with the intention weekly of just for this conference, and be like, spirits, if you want us to be able to afford a villa for a free month-long Enochian thing every year till we die, just win us the lottery, and then maybe they'll do it. And then Michael Lynch says something. I'm very appreciative of you raising this point, Michael Lynch. Now that's a real thing. Might wish to consider a nearby hotel with conference pricing. Let us know when the ducks are in a row. We're already doing that. So we're in downtown Austin. We'll have a block of rooms in a nearby hotel. We've got connections with the Marriott there through one of our members. We're already on this. We already have to-do lists. I already have people in Austin and friends in Austin helping out. So you'll be able to just get a room in a block of rooms at the hotel that's right nearby, along with everybody else. And, you just enter in a code and you just rent the room like normal. And, usually we can get a pretty good deal. And we timed this so that we're missing all the, the F1 event and the South by South. We timed this right. I have lots of friends there. And we'll be announcing presenters as they come in. We've got a good lineup already. Ash and Shasan. I'm hoping Dr. Sledge and Aaron Leach will return. Jason Louv, who lives in Austin, he will be one of our featured presenters. And there's some other people I don't want to say too much too soon. But yeah, there's hopefully Joseph Peterson will actually come in person. So that at the very least, so that he and I can jam out some jigs and reels on our Irish instruments for you all. I mean, I know you all want to hear him talk about Solomonic magic, Goetia, and Enochian, but I just want to, play a jig with him.
Well,
the heathen version LBRP swaps the angels for Norse gods and their weapons for the element correspondences. Greer was the inspiration for the system. See, right? Yeah. So you should call it something than the LBRP, because it's not the LBRP. The LBRP is not an elemental ritual, right? So switching it out with elemental god with different elements makes no sense, because it's not an elemental ritual. Now, I'm all for taking the LRP and adding and replacing the archangels with gods. Yeats did that, replacing them with archdruids that he scried from the Castle of Heroes. How did he access the Castle of Heroes of Irish mythology and gods? Well, the Tatwas, of course. How else do you access Irish gods other than Vedic mystical symbols? Duh. So yeah, so I'm all for having fun with this stuff, but yeah, that definitely would make the title Heathen LBRP very appropriate. And the Norse gods, of course, are very cool. So, you know, I would go further if I was this person. I would go further and change the ritual even more. Like look for a fundamental aspect of the Norse pantheon or religion that maybe is different from the standard, you know, 4-quarter thing, right? Maybe there's something more interesting there that you could do. I don't know. I don't think you need to just do a 1-for-1 replacements when you take one ritual and change it into a new ritual. Like if you're going to be creative and change a ritual into a new ritual, go for it. And maybe especially consult with the spirits and gods that you're using in that new ritual. That would be my thoughts. And Greer, of course, is the inspiration for many newfangled, fascinating, and powerful systems of magic.
I'm thinking of a ritual that we did years ago in Halazica, which is in the Czech Republic, a couple hours from Prague, and it was based on Tolkien's Elvish. But Bridges had come up with kind of, well, this will work for that. And anyway, so it was, the whole thing was in Elvish. It was great. It was special to in a lot of ways too, because when Alan first started writing me, the first thing he sent me was in Elvish, which was really sweet. But anyway, we went, and the spirits reacted to the Elvish. It was sort of like, well, we don't know what this language is, but it's kind of cool. So now, how you want to work that with Enochian is another whole matter. Oh,
well,
yeah?
Let me speak on behalf of the entire Golden Dawn community, right? Because obviously that's a thing. No. But let me say this, though. There is a general consensus in the Golden Dawn community. This is part of the ethos that has developed, or, you know, aborigine from the original order. This ethos of, if you're changing a ritual, it's not a version of that ritual. It's a new ritual. And this might sound like a saturnine constriction or criticism here, but it's not. It's an invitation to greater creativity, greater openness and discovery. So if you take the LBRP and introduce some Egyptian symbolism, give it a new name. You've created a new ritual. Call it something else. You might think that calling it a version of the LBRP is showing respect to the original Golden Dawn LBRP. But actually, that's not the Golden Dawn point of view. The Golden Dawn point of view tends to be, in general, because I obviously can't speak for the entire tradition, tends to be, if you change something, give it a new name. Just like the Golden Dawn took the Akephalos rite, the headless rite, changed it into a new ritual called the Bornless. Then Crowley made a new ritual version of that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I mean, then someone would say you're plagiarizing it, probably. But
I'm trying to dissuade people from the fear of that accusation by freeing them, saying, no, we'd actually prefer you give it a new name. We'll all notice it's based on the LBRP if it's based on the LBRP. No one will be like, oh, what did you base it on? No, we'll know that. But you've changed it. It's a new thing. The LBRP is a ritual with the archangels and the 4 names of God. That's what it is. If you change those things, it's no longer that ritual. It's something different because it does something different, because it no longer has the things that make the other thing. So that's how the Golden Dawn community in general thinks about this stuff. So you won't offend anyone by saying it's not a version of the LBRP. It's a new ritual. You won't offend Golden Dawn people. You'll make us happy because you're acknowledging your own credit and you're acknowledging that it does something new, probably.
Well, I'll defer to you on what Golden Dawn people do, but I will tell you what John Dee would do, since I don't really have any clue, but I will venture an opinion anyway, which is you just assume that everything can be synchronized with everything else. It's like, well, we're going to use this Codex Marcianus Graecus 299 thing, which is mixing Egyptian stuff, Hebraic stuff, Christian stuff, the Greek gods and God, and we're going to take that, and now we're going to mix it with whatever I wanted to mix it to today. And since I'm channeling John Dee, I must be sure that even though this doesn't fit together perfectly, well, we'll just throw away this stuff that doesn't fit. So who cares? And there we go. And I sound very sarcastic saying that, and I am, but it works. I mean, it works in a certain. So I mean, even the mathematical stuff, it works. So it doesn't, if you figure it out to however many decimal places, the way you would do, say, with sacred geometry transformations, if you had to do it trigonometrically and numerically, but it can work magically. Like I've seen it do that.
Yeah.
But
well, I think magic systems are you know, a human divinely inspired human contrivance for accessing, you know, our higher consciousness, our nous, our holy daimons that we, in which we have divine form. And so, you know, you change these systems, you have slightly different pathways to accessing that. And I think that people who are taking the Golden Dawn, like this fellow, and is inspired to then develop their religion of a Satru, inspired by GD ceremonial magic, yeah, feel free to give it a new name and call it a new thing. You know, you'll make the Golden Dawn people happier than if you said it's a version of it. Say it's a new thing. We can tell it's inspired, what it's inspired from. That's cool. That's fine. So there you go. Hopefully that sets people free, and frees them from the constraints of thinking they need to give credit to the GD, which they really don't. They can take inspiration from it and make their own thing, and that will make us happier than saying I made a new version, because often that leads to like then debating which version is best. It's like there's no versions. There's the ritual, and then there's your new ritual. So that's the way of thinking I see more predominant in GD circles these days. Someone says, Crushing Nihilism says, great name. It is interesting to see what clearly looks like Platonist and Pythagorean emanationist theology into a heathen context. Much to think about. Yeah, exactly. Have fun with it. You know, the glory of God is every creature fully alive, to quote Saint Irenaeus. He said some shitty things. That isn't one of them. Ice Hand says everything influences everything else anyway. Blind men and the elephant. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't think everything influences everything else at all. But maybe it does. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Lots of things don't influence me. And certainly the things that I practice don't influence a lot of other people. And they let me know that very regularly. So I'm not sure everything influences everything else.
Well, some things cancel other things out.
I'm also not convinced we're all blind men touching an elephant. I think we're all more likely blind men riding our own elephants. I don't know. We've been doing this for 3 hours now.
Yeah. Maybe it's the time to call it a night.
Who knows? I don't know. If anyone else wants to say something crazy,
to wave interference patterns or something like that, or the
quantum. I love that we went into a third hour here. Like I said, the first hours we talk about stuff people want to hear. Second hour we talk about stuff we want to talk about. Third hour we talk about whatever God inspires us to talk about. It's a beautiful chaos. Yeah. Well, thanks for chatting with me today. We have so much planning and work to do ahead of us. It's going to be exciting, folks. Congratulations to everyone who won a door prize at our conference, which the door prizes were drawn today, and there's a signed copy of Aaron Leach's 2-volume hardcover Language of Angels that is going out to a lucky winner, whose email starts with RBR. So you might know who you are. And a copy of David Heimsmith's Enochian, as well as 4 prints by Jose Gabriel Galegria Sabagal were raffled off. And we'll have even more door prizes next year as well, where they're not actually raffles, they're door prizes, because that's what we had to call them this year, because I'm based in British Columbia. So we have to always abide by the laws of the land, of course. You know, keep our noses clean.
Broder, I just want to say I find it very touching that you're such a law-abiding citizen. So put that in your pipe.
These days with AI crawling all over everything, the last thing you want to do is risk totalitarian regimes coming down on you.
I hear you. Well, listen,
thanks
for having me. It's pretty close to home. So thanks for having me. It's been a wonderful time.
You're welcome. This last question from Crushing Nihilism. Am I calling the Golden Dawn system a marketing strategy, or is it something more interesting? I have no idea why you think I might be calling it a marketing strategy. It makes no sense to me. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, No, I just think that people can take full credit for the rituals they create, even if they're inspired by other rituals. I think that's a freeing thought, to know that you don't need to, you know, if you take a GD ritual and you completely change it, give it a new name.
I mean, it doesn't work very well as a marketing strategy, because in my understanding, there was quite a few ugly lawsuits about who could be the Golden Dawn trademark. But let's not open that; it's too late.
Yeah, I've talked about that already ad nauseum, because I was in the
Yeah.
middle of that back in the 90s, and we've covered that. So Michael Lynch, thanks for being here. He had a great visit. He says thank you for seeing, and good to see you on the Zoom today during the door prize draw.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, and Jacobus, thank you very much. Yeah, it's good to see everybody. Have a great evening and a wonderful week, and stay tuned. Subscribe to arcaneresearchsociety.com to get notified of the early bird release for 2026. And if you've already joined for 2025, you can attend our workshop on December 6th for free, online or in person, here in Vancouver with us. And you can still attend the conference we did last summer as a course through our website, and you can do that for only $50 a month. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, thanks. I missed a fun podcast. Thank you. We had fun too. Terry.
See some of you soon. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Much love, Terry. Have a wonderful evening. And thanks everyone for joining. Cheers.
Cheers.
Crypto Wave. Cheers. All right. We'll take you on. La 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 la.
Be you still. Be you still, trembling heart. Remember the wisdom out of the old days. Him who trembles before the flame and the flood, and the winds that blow through the starry ways. Let the starry winds and the flame and the flood cover over and hide, for he has no part with the lonely, majestical multitude.